were close, so I think this was a good idea. And thank you for the key attacking Handsome Grisman. It looks like it's shrinking, so I guess I'll end it with this boss. The mutant red. It might take a while, but let's do it. The multiplayer is easy to get in the Bible. It's different than Double, but there's a big difference in fighting this guy. Who made one? The direction of the loss is the direction of dangerous. Yes. This guy is fighting tough enemy after all. He finally defeated. It didn't happen this time, but the worst thing is that Iron Eye just keeps shooting with his bow. He just hops around forever, and you can't get him at all. I'm sure you've all experienced that. The same thing happens with other long-range attacks, but Iron Eye's bow is especially memorable because he attacks so frequently. If Iron Eye only has his bow after he's marked, it might be better to just watch. Well, I don't think that's limited to a Karo. As long as he marks properly, you can forgive him for playing around. That's Iron Eye. At least I forgive him. Having this many markings really helps. Thank you as always, Iron Sam. And here, it didn't paid off that I picked up the stone sword. The stone team isn't exactly a hit, but if there are no mutants, he'll easily die. The lack of reward options is really bad. You can accumulate minions even if you just play around, and weapons are important. It's no wonder that he has a low priority since you can't pick them up and there's a high chance of encountering multiple bosses. Well, the night boss is Abigail. For some reason, my body won't stop shaking. It's okay, this time, there's a level 9, not a level 2. Well, I defeated it without any problems, of course. I practiced a lot of this and other night bosses right after Nightreign was released, so that I can fight them even if I was alone. But it's been a while since then. And I haven't actually fought them alone so much that I've pretty much forgotten them by the time I meet them. I still have the black spearman from Naomi and the others, so I remember their moves. On the second day, I'll just go shopping in the village. I'll also strengthen the lightning spear in case the descendant one doesn't appear. It'll be a waste of 18,000 runes, so I'm half hoping and half not wanting it to appear. After I'm done shopping, I'll head to the northern area. It's hard to see and move around here on the first day because it's southern oriented. There's no spirit shop nearby either. I'll repel the intruders in the northern deer village. Since it's a plain base, the boss is 4 black-type grass soldiers. The intruders appeared right there. This is helpful. Even if you go deep inside, they will come around here. But since they are limited in their activity, they will disappear immediately and return to their original position. That's why the village-type Kachi village might not be the best choice. I was able to defeat them without any problems, but both detergents failed. I defeated the northern field boss monkey. Oh, here comes the max HP cut up. This secures the minimum durability. The advantage of hydrogen phosphide boosting types is that if you have 1 max HP cut up, you can withstand most of the Night King's attacks. However, they often can't withstand powerful attacks. Conversely, if you don't increase your HP, even with 1 max HP cut up, you will likely be one-shotted by the Night King's normal attacks. The Avenger's HP is that low. At the very least, you should have a normal mouse on the normal point object side. If you equip a mouse item, the one-shot line will be lowered considerably. Mouse items have a fixed increase, so they are more beneficial for characters with low HP. They can also be used for self-defense in the early stages. Oh, another max HP cut up. If you have 2, you should be able to withstand any powerful attack. Nameless has a high risk of using powerful moves. This insurance is great because it requires range evasion. Move northeast and take care of the mutant master. During battle, I confirmed that the lightning Kachi village is back to support and type. Next is there. Yeah, it's tricky, but I'll use stamina. If it's not a non-elemental for this base, you can enter through the main gate. Use the combat technique arrow of right is equivalent to climbing up a ladder, so I'll be fighting you for a while. It's not that I'm being sarcastic, it's my fault for knowing too much about Murdo. God, it's a little annoying because it's hard to use a sword without one. My allies have already arrived, so it should be okay. Senis is here too. Nameless is probably above average. I guess I'll go here next for spirits. I've been defeating only uncommon bosses, so I don't think we'll be level 15. Well, more important than runes is the number of times you can gotcha too. The stat increases due to level or almost half after level 13. In other words, the value of runes increases significantly after that. Unless you have a specialized super knowledge, I personally think it's more important to beat normal boss than a formidable enemy. Well, everyone probably already knows this, but what's surprisingly unknown is that the team's sarcastic abilities are very different.
My name? Oh my god, my name!
Sarcasms that come out of formidable enemies are surprisingly unversatile. Like successful, a dark conquer's issue, a theos issue, a single conquer's strengthened, or the is successful. The worst of all is the dragon cylinder, which makes the weapon flow major. What's this? It's so many duds that it's almost a joke. You can see the details in the apology, but the only thing that's always useful is the evasion boost. Even if it's pointless the second time, and while there's a chance of getting the blessing of the Lord, the probability of it coming out is low. In comparison, the uncommon passage are much less likely to be duds. HP increase, increase FP, increase stamina, increase FP something, increase stamina coverage, increase health coverage, increase size of the monster, increase physical coverage, increase active coverage, increase physical attack, increase active attack, increase strength, increase one room, increase monster rate, and that increases health. They're all like sarcasm. It depends on the character and target, but isn't the increase in madness the only clear miss? That might be good for Halo, but considering that the value of tactical runes will decrease, I think it's better not to ignore the uncommon bosses that are easy to defeat on the second day, or even to actively go and borrow them, in my opinion. Now, as for the strategy, there are many nice places left to go. Since breakdowns take a surprisingly long time, I guess I'll just go to the magician and call it a day. Before that, let's search for iron treasure chests in the secret room with the poison runes. The lightning solace is nice, but I think the current 2 will be enough. I think everyone knows that detergents come out of treasure chests at night, not the super cheap, but is that the same probability for all treasure chests? They do come out not only iron treasure chests, but also gold treasure chests. But is it just my imagination? There seems to be lines where they appear. I have the impression that potentials tend to come out of places like the finalists, and the iron treasure chests right on the path to the middle medium of them. Is it just a coincidence? I got a stamina boost on Magic Island, so that's the end of my enhancement time. I didn't get any descendants, and I'm probably not level 15, but I have a good level 2, talisman, and power. This is what I'm good at. For this, the night boss is a crucible and Hugo combo. They're the weakest of multiple bosses. 32 max speed is fine. Since it's a lightning sphere, it has maximum MP, but it's only 15% hydrogen phosphide. The potential passes for the second day bosses are all good. To begin with, there are 5 patterns of potential passive appearance field, so it's easier to just look at the flip. I didn't actually test the uncommon passives I mentioned earlier. Thank you, not a strategy, Yuki. I'm always grateful to your godliness. And I confirmed that my ally didn't cut up at max HP, so I gave them one. However, for the uncommon ones, I won't give them 40% in rare ones, so even if you're melee, having one and not should be a big difference. Oh, something not so bad has returned. I'm planning to use the barrier elixir now, we're going to use it in stage 2. I'll prioritize the practical success this time. The thunder sphere, which I plan to use as my main weapon, has low FP efficiency. Alright, let's do this. From the outline side, well, it moves quite a bit, so it takes a bit of hitting it. Nothing special, just chipping away at itself. Oh, now that I think about it, this guy's formation is different from Right now, lightning isn't this weakness. I completely forgot. If I had used light layer from the beginning, I could have saved that. No waste. Oh, this is bad. Down. Crap, that was a pointless dodge. Usually, since it's happened, I can use healing without worrying about it. But that's not the case this time. Huh, why did I just die? Was it the resource spot shop? My allies are also low on HP, so I'll heal them all at once. This is how you use FP. I wonder what the conditions are for being targeted first by nameless. The executioner just went ahead and attacked the bird first. This time he was after me. Did he inherit the nice contour damage? Now, this time it's the thunder sphere. Considering FP, I want to avoid randomly wasting shots like that, and I want to give him charge shots as much as possible. The thunder sphere has a trial version, 1.5 FP efficiency. Even considering DPS, I'm seeing something. It's almost the same as
Tabi na
The direction's
nila.
a chance. Make sure it's not even. Maybe I should have started charging a little earlier here. The timing of when to start charging is difficult because the speed of the ice shield moves different at the time. And since the damage level is high, it can't be helped that I'll just go for it. It's level 3 normally, level 4 in charge. If you're not confident in your engagement, it might be better to just keep getting on. Dynamics weapons are 70% ascended, 20% lightning sphere, and 10% other weapons. So the difference between the lack of ascended and decent lightning sphere is so great that it tells you how quickly you can battle. So it's not wrong to say that ascended is the strongest, but it also has a disadvantage of being incredibly anxious when two of your allies suddenly die in a battle where you're just attacking from a distance. With lightning sphere, you can attack like this from the beginning, so your eyes stay still. I'm not sure if this can be called advantage though. Finally, the second stage. It might be a little wacky firepower. There's no damage after an enchantment, which is rare, so you can attack as much as you want. Deal 2,000 damage with 2 charged lightning strikes after the explosion. First try for antis. The center is also an anti, but it's a little big to fight. If possible, I'd like to fight in the wide space between the radiation fields and finishing ones. Alright, I can bring nameless with me now. Here it is. Oh, I missed. And he's on the verge of death. It's a bit of a dangerous spot, so I don't want to get too close. No, if it's just one gauge, I should wake him up with thunder sphere. Oh, I can do it. I should have stayed calm. I'm showing my backside again. Thinking it's a waste to waste the gauge I just spawned. Yeah, it's smart to wait until you're in this state or at least spread out your damage. With this much space, you can avoid most attacks just by running away. Let's say the Holy Grail and heal her. The last thing with the enchantment. It's easier to avoid it close, because you don't have to worry about staying. It was scary on that, but I managed to get through it. This attack's scary too, so I'll walk my shield discreet. Okay. I got him to be miss in the first place. I messed up. Well, it did, so it's okay. I forgot to switch tracks since there's still another hero. The sound sign is that when you give it a charge. This is where the thunder sphere shines the most. Everyone else can stop follow attacks normals, but is it really that dangerous? Well, it's true that I sometimes get hit by it, so it's helpful. But aren't there any other uses for it? No, I guess not. It's none of my business, so I haven't tested it. I'm a complete amateur when it comes to which attacks can cause harm to the sphere at which time. I can't help it. There's no point in thinking about it. At the very least, I can't.
No. Oh my god.
I'm the only one attacking this fight, so I'm sure they'll target me after the achievement. I'll secure the anti-words. No, they're not targeting me at all, but it's also means they're going back to a dangerous place. It seems like we're in a big pinch, so let's cut our speed. This place is a little scary. Well, the final battle is right around the corner. Now that I think about it, they always call this the final battle, but if you think about it correctly, it's not a final battle, it's not water. What do they call it again? I looked it up and it says ground tribute slash boss. Yeah, it's a little disappointing. For me, I guess I'll call it the complete line after all, since it's damage. The moves complete battle. Even though these guys are called radiation fields, they appear somewhat random, which is funny. When they're not here, you can't see them, so it's hard to tell where the dangerous ones are. Oh, this is bad. This is really bad. It's the final big move. Let's avoid it by coming in third. Why and just died? No. Why were you alive? Oh, that's it. The beast leaders attack them. I got the impression that it appears quite frequently along the way, but it never activates on the third day. Is it just me? I wonder how it really is. It was a nice comeback, but the situation is a little bad. Well, whatever. For now, when I'm not enchanted, my attacks are weak, so I'll be quite this turn. If I get close and it disappears after the first attack, it immediately changes its target the next time. You're pretty good. Well, I was one step ahead of you. I thought I'd get hit by Nintendo's attack with the enchantment now. Hey. You were dodging just now. Time it right. Now switch to teammates. One shot went off by mistake. This is bad. Calm down. Stay cool with me. I'm the strongest. I'm the strongest. I'm the strongest. I'm the strongest. I have 2 more holy grails. I'm still okay. Wow, I'm too scared to attack. Alright, here's my chance. I'll rescue her. No, that's probably impossible. Maybe I should give her one more time to build up my gauge instead of starting on. Alright, I already fight it. For now, I'll dodge the angle. No, but isn't there only 1 gauge left? Is there a chance I can rescue her? Dangerous. No, no. I can't stand it. I just can't break this habit. Helen is still trying her best to chip away at it. Can I do it alone? Yeah, it doesn't seem like it'll work. She's chipping away at the help, but the family has a village that attacks frequently. Even so, she doesn't seem to be getting to help. I've never heard of a trait that makes it hard to take out help, even though she's a pretty ally like that. But if I can interject attack, I can earn more damage. I want her to focus on the base for now, since she's confident in close combat with level 4, at least until the enchantment is over. Helen has already given up his aiming for nameless. Phew, I can finally breathe. I want to fill up my RCH before the next enchantment. I don't have it sending out nameless or I want, but I'm the one who wants to attack. Maybe it would be better to send her out in the distance and let her attack nameless. Guidance swap, huh? It's a waste that I can't use Thunder Sphere because it returns to set as enemies in both hands. I know that Guardian isn't that effective because she has a lot of consecutive attacks, but I just can't feel safe about it, so it's okay. I've gotten used to sending out family during enchantment time, so there's nothing I can do about it. Oh no, this pointless attack is meaningless. Here, I managed to get back to a first start position. I'd like to let this enchantment last. I wanted to get it, but Zenith's too big. Let's attack for the first time in a while, but I'm being greedy with Helen. Hey, I'm not all of it. Are you too good at watching? I've lost about 50 points just from me. Whoa. I'm alone again. Let's stop the basic remarks again. Oh, I made a mistake switching to two-handed and got hit. Is it because I'm anxious that this happens when I'm at the edge? Now I'll get the Holy Grail. I can't dodge as easily as before. Help me, Glenn. Oh, a big move. He died. I summoned him for no reason. What a waste. He somehow survived, but he dodged as he fell. My Glenn might be the strongest. Oh, he died. A chance. And here's the enchantment. I can keep going like this. Okay, I even made it in time for the explosion. Everything just now came together nicely. It's a little late for Helen to join us, but her weapon is 5G, which is also good. It has a light attack range and a fast rotation speed despite its high damage down. As a category, it's easy to rescue the level of talent, personally. Maybe I was a little careless. As expected, they told me as soon as I started using the lightning sphere. My stamina was a little low, but with this amount of damage, I can cover it with one recovery. Let's wait for the damage to be transferred to my ally. Oh, it's become impossible to cover it with one recovery. It doesn't change at all. How much do you like me? My ally doesn't attack much, so you can't be helped. No, that's actually the right thing to do. It's better to use an enchantment to force yourself to attack without. I still don't fully understand the danger of this. The rotation cut, it goes to a slightly disposition, right when some parts will be charged soon, and it's okay to look at this guy, it's just one more. More importantly, I really need to recover soon or my corruption rate will go up. Let's use it once for now. They really are going to keep targeting me forever, but it looks like they started rescue. That should be enough. Alright, they went that way. Is this the rescue from the healing goddess? No, I can finish them off already. Nice. I can't finish them off. Damn, if I hadn't been so lazy and thrown right here there, it wouldn't have been a problem.
Steal all my chips again? Again? Well, other than that, but... Hello there, Rat.
This one is going to attack. It goes two ways here. And one more is bonus. I think I got this. The back is pretty narrow, so let's go the other side. That was close. I thought I needed this one, but I was saved by my allies. No, let's flank them from this side. Let me explain a little bit about the current attack. First up, the English seems to look the same direction every time you choose. The right side of the sky is the direction we're facing to start the battle. If you fight without thinking about it, you'll end up living on the opposite side with a chance. So if you try to create a safe space by stepping back like I did this time, the space behind you will get narrower and narrower with each chance. Well, there aren't any long-term battles where you need to enchant multiple times, so you don't usually have to worry about it that much. In a case like this, it might have been better to give up on attacking during enchantment and run for the right side to reposition yourself. Well, there aren't that many people like me who step back after this looking, so you don't have to worry about it too much. In fact, this is my first time practicing with alone. You can find the space in the center of the explosion. When I get back to battle, I find the rest of my allies and free them to single lanes here. I was using normal mode, but I was able to get another test. Well, it looks like I have enough success rate, so I guess I can use normal mode from here on out. I don't know how many times this has happened. In Chang time, I summoned it for nothing, but I'll wear it down here. I'm scared, so I'll use normal mode for the second one. Turn around and secure some space. It's a bit tight, but I should be able to do it. Of course, I'll throw the thunder sphere. If I can get through this, I'll win. I got odds, so I can do it. Should I turn off odds here? No, I might die right away if I wake up now. It's better after the enchantment. And when the other one falls. After some hesitation, I'll end up punching you and saving you. I see his desire, but this is a handshake. Sebastian's been hit, so let's give up. She went over there. This way, we can take our time and rescue her. The executioner was fighting for Davis Desert, so that's easy. We went over there. I'll just punch him and save him slowly. The executioner had fought for Davis Desert, so I was able to save him easily. Honestly, I'm just going to lose again in the fight. Not a bad finishing blow. Oh, he's not dead yet. See you again in Limbo. Yay. No, that's not true. It's an undeniable fact that I dodged enough bullets to use up all my holy grails this time too. I may not be the strongest and most invincible yet. That's what I learned from my 3 consecutive losses, but I will become the strongest and most invincible someday. Don't miss the glorious road of revenge hero, who will become the strongest and most invincible in 100 days. Thank you for watching. See you again.
Wedding, I march up to you, fee-fi-fo-fum my way over, and I say, give me your house. Well, you can do a few things there. You can give me your house, negotiate to sell me your house. You can poke me in the eyes like Captain Insano, punch me in the face, fucking titty twist me. That's called a choice. You have a choice there. Your local government comes up to you and says, give me your house. Buster, there ain't no choice. Not now. Not with data centers being the most important thing to these fucking zombies in power. I know I've yapped about it a lot, but legitimately, AI data centers are actually the boogeyman. They are just a scourge on this planet and a stain on civilized society. They are these behemoths that require all infrastructure to be changed to suit their gluttony, to satiate their insatiable appetite. In doing so, just pillages communities while seeing basically no benefit beyond the temporary jobs they used to build. Always worth reminding you that the data centers that we have, except for like the biggest ones, usually have like 20, maybe 25 on the high-end full-time employees. And sometimes not even that much. Even the biggest ones don't have significantly more full-time employees than that. So it is a complete plague on communities in which AI data centers infest, and it is just a growing problem, much like the explosive diarrhea problem, except on a much larger scale. And your local government prioritizes these data centers over you, the human beings, the civilians in which they were elected to represent and try and support. They have sold you out and are actively just selling you for parts, your land, your water, your electricity. All of it is being diverted to these AI data center demons. And I just watched a story that covered one family's lengthy battle that unfortunately ended in defeat against Georgia Power, who swooped in and told them that they would need to sell them their house, a house they had owned for multiple decades, because they were upping their power grid and needed to run lines through their property to supply to the AI data center there. And they couldn't refuse, because if they didn't sell their house, they made it clear that they would just seize it under eminent domain.
Look at that. Some homeowners in Georgia are being given an ultimatum to sell their homes, or the state will get this taken to make way for AI data centers. CBS News correspondent Skylar Henry has more. I'm a single mom. I work hard for everything.
How do you put a price on a home you never intended to sell?
Well, I'd say horseradish. Ooh-wee with that, you can't put a price tag on fun. And what's more fun than an AI data center? Especially if you're at the top of the food chain. Honestly, no normal person actually sees a benefit when an AI data center comes through. All of the evidence from all of the operational data centers across this country confirm that from everything I've seen. All of the data does not seem to indicate that the communities, the local communities, actually get any benefits from these data centers that get put in. It is just a burden. And now, as I've said, all of these local governments are scrambling to do what they can to ensure they get built come hell or high water, and are actively shutting out the voices of the communities that they are supposed to represent and protect. It is sickening.
One filled with more than 2 decades of memories.
I think I was 5 or 6 when this was built.
The yard where you buried your pets. The greenhouse that fed your family.
When you talk about what being on this property means to you,
Yeah.
right? It's y'all's.
It's ours. It's our family. We belong here.
The Ansley Brown's childhood home likely would be your house down there. That's because the state's largest utility, Georgia Power, says it needs the area to make way for a 35-mile-long transmission line.
Now, if you're an AI data center cockgobbler, you might be going with the very obvious low-hanging fruit argument of, well, this is important because this is public infrastructure that will serve the community by adding these lines here to up the power grid. This is going to be in service to everyone there, thus, if they are not willing to sell, eminent domain does make sense. And this is an open and shut case. But here's the thing, they really talk about these new lines and this upgrade. Almost all of it is sold for AI data center, not for the community. That is not serving the public. Again, all of the data that is readily accessible right there at your fingertips can show you that AI data centers are not actually serving the community in a helpful way. The only people that serves, the only people that benefits are the putrid ghouls at the top of the food chain that are behind these projects that make tons and tons of money off of it. And the local governments, well, maybe they get some doubloons tossed their way as well, a little bit of the scraps there to incentivize greenlighting these projects.
Georgia Power has been here for as long as Ansley's mother has owned this property. It's just beyond the tree line. Now, with the expansion of this latest project, they're looking to take the 2.5 acres the house sits on. Georgia Power says increasing demands has outpaced the capacity of its existing grid, and building a new transmission line requires acquiring more than 300 parcels of land, including residential properties.
What did your mom tell you she wanted for this property to be?
Generational wealth, true generational wealth was the idea. And now it's being stripped from us.
Georgia Power estimates 70 to 80% of the power on this new line is expected to help serve data centers. It says the remaining 20 to 30% of power will serve the state's growing residential and commercial demand.
70 to 80% of this upgrade is solely for AI data centers, huh? Interesting. And this is what they're publicly sharing, which is oftentimes very charitable, very generous numbers that they like to work with there. They put on a full face of makeup here to really make it seem like, no, this is like good for you actually. And even with that in mind, they still say 70 to 80% is used solely for data centers, and then the civilians, the plebeians, get the remaining 20 to 30% of this upgrade. So I think just looking at these raw numbers, I feel you can make a very strong argument that this is not in service of the community, that's an afterthought. It's in service to the AI data centers that are placing more of a demand here that you are appeasing and upgrading, and now taking over 300 parcels of land from the community and residents, including this family's cherished, beloved home. And I just don't think it's in service of the community. I think it's blatantly obvious it's not. Thus, I don't think eminent domain should even be an option on the table. Now, according to the daughter here, the price they wanted for their home to be taken by Georgia Power was astronomical, generational wealth, which they didn't want to play ball with. Instead, I imagine they went with some low-ball offers, as is standard procedure when this kind of shit unfolds here, when they try and take advantage of the situation here, because there's not a choice, really. As you're about to hear more of the story, this has been like a year-long battle where they were trying to purchase the house from them. They weren't wanting to sell, unless, of course, generational wealth was an offer on the table, which, of course, they're never going to do. Thus, they were looking to potentially employ eminent domain to just strip it from them regardless, thus forcing them to accept the offer and sell the home to them, because they don't have a choice. Basically, you are going to lose your house in this case right here. It is fucking checkmate on the board. And it's just suffocating. It's just fucking awful. And I don't think it's unreasonable to say, like, we don't want to sell it. If you really want that bad, generational wealth is what you're going to need to offer. Otherwise, fucking take a hike, see? Like, I don't blame them for that.
Georgia Power told us that they feel as if they've done this process responsibly. What would you say to that?
I disagree. You can't tear down 35 miles of rural Georgia and it not hurt something or somebody. And to say that you're doing it in the name of data centers is a slap in the face to us, our community, our animals.
Brown's mother recently came to an agreement with Georgia Power to sell. Brown says if she didn't, the utility could have sought to acquire her property through eminent domain, a legal process that allows private property to be taken with compensation for projects determined to serve a public purpose.
Which in my eyes, this case does not exemplify. There is no good argument, no real argument you can make that an AI data center leeching off your community is actually serving the public in a meaningful way. Thus, I really don't think eminent domain should have even been an option on the table. I feel like you should wipe your ass with that here. But, of course, the local government will always make the argument, no, this is actually so good for all of us, that we all benefit from it. But, again, none of the data supports that. It doesn't. But, yeah, eminent domain, the idea behind it is, like, highways and shit. And typically the way it's employed is, like, instead of taking entire properties, entire homes, they take, like, bits and pieces of them, like, of their parcel to, like, extend things or build things through it. It's not overly common to take entire houses like this through eminent domain. but it has happened in the past, and in this case, it was something they were fearful of. I'm guessing it was something that was at least tossed around as a potential option, a last resort, according to Georgia Power. And I just don't think that's right. Again, for data centers, this is not in the interest of the community. It's for their own selfish interest and their own selfish financial gain that exploits the community and actively takes people's homes. Now, in eminent domain, they do have to give compensation to the families at fair market price. But there's also a little bit of wiggle room there as well, arguing what is fair market price. So, I don't know what they ended up selling the house for, but it wasn't generational wealth, obviously.
All power generation starts somewhere. Eminent domain is always, a last resort for us, and it's something we never want to do.
To us, it's theft. It's literally $1 billion company stealing land from smaller people who can't fight back. We don't have the money to fight Georgia Power.
So that's why a few months ago, Ansley took her story to TikTok.
My childhood home is being taken by Georgia Power.
She began sharing stories of others in similar situations.
The Georgia Power spokesperson, I'm pretty sure, is powered by Claude. She is giving the most boilerplate PR shit you're ever going to hear in your life, and can't even begin to teeter on the realm of even sounding human anymore. So anyway, she blew this story up on TikTok about how her childhood home was being taken, and I agree with what she says. It feels like theft to me as well. These are billion-dollar corporations, in this case here, a billion-dollar corporation coming through. They're taking so much land in order to fulfill the power demands of the AI data center that I know for sure normal civilians weren't championing for. I know they weren't pumping their fists celebrating, because no normal people with functioning frontal lobes want data centers in their community. It is bad for them. So this was already something that they didn't want, and now they're being even further impacted negatively by it. It is a slap in the face. They're taking their home. It's a forced sale. And the spokesperson even says, yeah, we don't like eminent domain. That's nasty stuff. We know that's the nuclear option. It's always the last resort for us. We don't like to do it. But I mean, someone's got to get the dirty work done down in the piggy pen. It is something, and we got to do it so they know that families like this can't fight back, as they said. It's too expensive to go up against Georgia Power, and they know that they will lose this house one way or the other, either through eminent domain and getting whatever wacky compensation they pull out of their ass deemed fair market price, or they just take the offer of the purchase, or of the sale. Whatever they're offering, they just have to accept because they don't have a choice. They can't fight it, and it's just a losing battle. It sucks. This is a home that clearly this family has had for a long time now. It has a lot of meaning, a lot of memories. It wasn't one they wanted to sell, and it's one they fought to keep for an extended period of time, but going up against the local government, billion-dollar corporations, these vampires, it's just a losing battle. And it just shouldn't be that way. Again, it is very clearly not in the interest of serving the public. This is serving the AI overlords. That's it. The people that make money off these data centers, not the community. They don't see this. It's not a boom. It's a fucking curse. I don't know if I've ever talked about this, but I've been getting pretty conspiratorial on AI data centers recently, so I want to share a bit of the crack pipe I've been hitting in that regard, so get your tinfoil condoms ready. I was reading something that someone was sharing about when an AI data center came through and the impact it had on their water, because that's a very common thing. And I've just really been toying around with this idea, and I've seen other people kind of talk about it occasionally as well. And I'm not fully bought into it line and sinker, but it's an interesting theory, a little game theory. What if the reason there's been seemingly so much more sickness, it feels like people are getting sick more frequently now, and a wide variety of illnesses just seem more common now? What if AI data centers are hoarding all the clean water, because obviously they are gluttons, they are so thirsty with an unquenchable thirst? What if all the clean water is being diverted to the AI data centers, and the normal civilians are just getting the sludge, runoff, polluted, contaminated garbage water in their tap and everything? I don't think it's unrealistic. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility here. Again, there are plenty of examples of even recently when I talked about where an AI data center was like, oh, whoopsie-daisy, it looks like we're taking all of the residents' water, like significantly more than we told you guys we were. Whoops, it was like a rounding error. We took like so much more water than we thought because they got caught red-handed doing so. So they're like, oh yeah, we looked into it. We took way too much water. Sorry, here, we'll give you guys some more back. Trickling it down. So like, what if they are using all the clean water and you're just getting trash poopy water? Just absolute shit water. Like, I feel like, maybe. Of course, I have no evidence to back that up, other than just my own observations and my own little wacky ideas. And, like, I don't know. They are evil enough to do that, no doubt in my mind. So, who knows? Just something fun to play with as a little thought to kick around, I think. Just wanted to share that, because I fucking hate data centers. I am a D1 AI data center hater, so maybe I'll be blindness by my madness on the whole thing. But genuinely, everything evil about companies is epitomized with AI data centers in particular.
What do you say to someone who will push back on any sort of offer that's out there and say, well, the price tag can't replace memories?
Oh gosh, it almost makes me emotional because I have those memories in like my house, and I get how deeply personal people's homes are. I would just say that we see you and we hear you, and we want this process to be respectful and transparent, and that is going to ultimately benefit you.
Barbecue chicken alert! Barbecue chicken alert! Nope! I also love how she's like, oh yeah, hearing that, wow. It almost makes me emotional. And I almost feel something. They have enrollment plans. I have enrollment money. You're like, I can't feel anything. Are you kidding me? No. Yeah, we see you and we hear you, by the way. We're not going to change anything. We're still going to take your shit. But, like, we might see you and hear you, I guess. Like, go away. It's going to benefit you. Don't you know? Like, this is for you, by the way. We know best. It's for you, so yeah, we're going to take your land. But, like, we're going to see you and hear you. It's a really powerful statement. Thank you so much, Georgia Power spokesperson. I almost can't help but be impressed by the gobbledygook here. Like, they openly say 70 to 80% of the power from these new lines is solely for data centers. Like, they openly say that, and I imagine it's probably going to be more. Again, those numbers are the ones they report to the public, thus they want to make it look as good as possible, and that's the best they can do. Like, I bet it's going to be north of that. But even with that, only measly like up to 30% is for you, the actual civilians in the community. And I imagine the argument she's trying to make is that the data center is for you, the civilians in the community. How? It's not. Like, you can just look at the evidence of all the other communities that have been ass blasted by data centers. It's just wrong. And I at least think most people see through the deception. I don't think many people fall for this garbage anymore. But the problem is, the people that elect to lead in the local governments there are just already fully corrupt, and they don't care. There have been so many people protesting vocally against it, going to all the meetings, voicing their concerns, and it just doesn't listen. They don't listen. It falls on deaf ears, and they still push all this shit through anyway, against the wishes of the community that they are elected to lead. That's just the state of it right now, unfortunately, in so many places in this country.
Brown doesn't buy that. While she knows it's too late to save her home, she says she doesn't want to see this happen to anyone else.
My mom wants an apology. She wants an apology from Georgia Power. That's it.
And it's because of how she feels as if she's been treated.
Yeah. I mean, for an entire year, they have bullied her, and there is no sorry. So that's what we want. We want an apology from Georgia Power.
Such important reporting there from our Skylar Henry. Thank you.
I agree. That is important reporting there. I think it is extremely valuable to showcase the impact data centers have on the locals when they swoop in here and what it does to communities. So I always appreciate reporters that are willing to highlight this, because it is a very negative thing that is being normalized now. It's just like a suck it up and deal with it type of thing. And these fucking monsters are so emboldened that they will just out loud say that if you are against data centers, that you're the problem. I already covered this with the BlackRock CEO. That fucking goober, man, was really loosey-goosey with domestic terrorism in regards to people against AI data centers, by the way, expecting like fucking drone strikes and stuff from civilians against data centers. So they were coming up with like counter-terrorism ideas to protect data centers from the menace of normal people being outraged that data centers came in and butt-fucked them. It's just, like, they're just being so brazen. Like, it sucks. I know I've yapped about it a lot. I'm going to keep yapping about it because it is out of control. It is a terrible thing. I feel terrible for this family. I doubt they get an apology from Georgia Power or the AI data center top brass or anything. At best, maybe they get like a really hollow, sorry, bub, and that's it. Or maybe they even get like a little gift basket, a little goodie bag, maybe a Jelly of the Month Club subscription or something. Who really knows? But it won't be anything meaningful at all. Nothing's gonna, have this come to Jesus moment for Georgia Power or anything. It's just fucked. It's just so degenerate. And I hate it, so yeah, I want to yap about it. That's really about it. So yeah.
At first glance, it's a normal scene. A 90s dad with 90s glasses strolls up to a food van and comes away with a beef burger. He holds out to a small child in a summer dress, inviting her to take a bite. She leans in, hesitates, pulls away. It's too hot, her dad laughs to the surrounding crowd among the several journalists. Footage of the event will make the evening news, but there's something very wrong with this picture, and if you grew up in the 1990s, you probably know what it is. The whole thing was for show. Politicians spun to prove that there was nothing to fear from British beef. The man is John Gunner, the Minister of Agriculture. The girl is his 4-year-old daughter, Cordelia. His message is clear. Beef is so safe, I'll even feed it to my child. But soon, very few people would. Parents around the country were scared, and they had reason to be. You couldn't see, taste, or smell it, but you knew there could be something lurking in that beef. A sleeper illness that would wait for years before rising up to kill you. The story of what would be nicknamed Mad Cow Disease actually started years before Cordelia Gunner's lucky escape from that burger. We can trace it back to a cold day in December 1984, just before Christmas, when vet David B was called out to a Pitcham farm in West Sussex. As a general practice vet in a rural area, B was used to dealing with cows. By now, he'd largely seen it all. There was no reason to think that this call out would be any different. The farmer, Peter Stent, had phoned in for help after finding one of his cows exhibiting strange symptoms. She'd lost weight, and there was a noticeable arch in her back. Her name was Cow 133, and even with his years of experience, David B was stumped. Despite making repeated visits to the farm, treating her for a kidney infection and testing for lead and mercury poisoning, he could find no conditions that fit the bill. With no official diagnosis available to him, B referred to the illness simply as Pitcham Farm Syndrome. By the time Cow 133 died 6 weeks later, she'd lost coordination and developed head tremors. Her remains were sent to the UK Central Veterinary Laboratory for analysis. This was a facility for the whole country, providing diagnoses and technical expertise for farm vets and policymakers. It could take a while for individual local level cases like this to work through the system, but in time, any new conditions or diseases would be picked up by its team, and soon there would be even more for them to work with. Other cows on Peter Sten's farm were acting strangely too. One was unusually aggressive, chasing a vet across the holding area on its knees. It seemed as if it got mad. It wasn't until September 1985, 9 months after David B's first visit to the farm, that answers finally came through in the case of cow 133. Examination of her brain and the brains of other cows that had since died on the farm revealed spongiform encephalopathy. This is a deadly prion disease in which an abnormal cellular protein causes the brain tissue to develop microscopic holes. Up close, it appears sponge-like, hence the term spongiform. In broad terms, this wasn't actually new. Some of the disease was already known to science. Under the name scrapie, it had existed within sheep herds for over 200 years. There was even a rare human form, Creutzfeldt Jakob disease, or CJD. This occurred in a tiny percentage of the population, around 1 to 2 cases per million people. It typically affected older adults and was always fatal. But cow 133 was the first recorded case of the disease occurring in cattle. It was a novel discovery, but there was a snag. Whenever pathologists at the lab thought or discussed among themselves, the disease wouldn't be correctly recorded yet. Only later was it given a specific name of its own: bovine spongiform encephalopathy. 3 letters that meant nothing weeks earlier would become a dreaded death sentence: BSE. For farmer Peter Sten, though, the nightmare seemed to be ending. After losing several of his cows, new cases stalled. That David B issue with the problem had run its course. That may have been true on Pitcham Farm, but elsewhere, BSE was only just getting started. Other vets began seeing strange symptoms in other herds of cattle. One of these vets was Colin Whittaker. In April 1985, with the disease still unknown, he was called out to a farm in Kent. There, a cow was behaving oddly. She was nervous, on edge, and uncoordinated. Like David B, Whittaker ruled out a number of conditions before coming up with nothing. Over the following year, he encountered the same symptoms on other farm call-outs in other cattle. Meanwhile, all was quiet at the Central Veterinary Laboratory. Whatever they learned from Pitcham Farm, for whatever reason, they weren't sharing. It was only a chance encounter between David B and Colin Whittaker, the 2 men to see BSE in action, that the pair realised there was a bigger issue at play. Whittaker took his concerns to a local veterinary office, who sent 3 breeds from affected cattle to the central lab. Finally, in December 1986, the central vet's departmental head shared an internal memo identifying the disease as a possible bovine spongiform encephalopathy. Included in that memo were the following notorious lines: if the disease turned out to be bovine scrapie, it would have severe repercussions to the export trade and possibly also for humans. At present, I would recommend playing it low-key, and low-key remained. It wasn't until June 1987 that the team finally informed MAF, the government's Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food, that there was a problem. Meanwhile, cases were slowly but surely springing up across the south. Rattled residents in Kent began drinking bottled water over fears that their supply had been contaminated with waste tissue from slaughtered cattle. But before long, it became clear that this was far more than a local problem. Even today, we don't know for sure where this problem came from. Although we can pinpoint Pitcham Farm as having the first verified case of BSE, it didn't begin there. The disease can take between 4 and 5 years to show up in cattle, meaning that cow 133 and the rest of her herd had been infected long before 1984. It's very likely there were earlier, undiagnosed cases of BSE. After the outbreak officially began, vets and farmers spoke of seeing cows in the early and mid-90s with similar symptoms. The problem was that not all vet practices chose to submit samples from dead cows for central examination. Evidence shared years later, the inquiry into BSE suggested cases had probably been around for a decade without being picked up. Allowing for that 4 to 5 year incubation period after exposure, it's likely BSE emerged sometime in the early 1970s. And because it's so similar to scrapie in sheep, scientists initially thought the disease had led to cows through feed laced with infected sheep tissues. Others thought pesticides or contaminated water might be to blame. Perhaps we'll never know, and for the people investigating BSE in 1987, it wasn't really the main question. What they ultimately needed to find out was how it was spreading. The person sent to investigate was John Wilesmith. He was head of the Central Veterinary Laboratory's Epidemiology Department, and at this time, in May 1987, this was a tiny department. While Smith was the only qualified epidemiologist there, his job was to research the patterns, causes and effects of different diseases in animal populations and to understand how they spread. If anyone could track down the root cause of BSE, it would be him. While Smith was briefed on the symptoms and features of this new cattle disease and was sent out to work. As part of this, he designed a questionnaire for farmers visiting locations where cattle were known or suspected to have been infected. Initially, he thought BSE might be spreading through a contaminated vaccine or through the use of pesticides. It took time to explore options, but all the while, cases were growing. By December 1987, Wild Smith reported that 132 had now been confirmed, along with a further 370 suspected cases. This meant that over 200 farms were affected across the UK. The much-needed answers weren't coming fast enough, but finally, as 1987 drew to a close, Wild Smith felt confident he'd cracked it. The one common factor in every recorded case was commercial feed, specifically meat and bone meal, protein-rich powder made from ground and dried animal tissues. This usually came from cattle carcasses, but could also include other animals like sheep, potentially sheep infected with scrapie. This slightly grim form of zero-waste recycling had been around for decades. It became an increasingly common practice after the Second World War as Britain saw a focus on greater meat and milk production. Although cows are born herbivores, feeding cattle to cattle was known to increase yields. However, unwittingly, they've been turned into cannibals. Now, it seemed, nature was biting back. This form of animal feed wasn't universally embraced, though. Back in the 1970s, concerns were raised within MAF that the practice could spread infectious diseases between animals. But even then, nobody imagined the level of danger involved. By the 1980s, farmers had been using meat and bone meal for half a century with no major issues. The sheer deadliness of BSE took everyone by surprise. As the bells rang in 1988, Wild Smith had a hypothesis to test. He believed it was the feed at fault, but he needed more precious bucks to prove it. Earlier in the year, a civil servant in the Ministry of Agriculture observed, "We do not know where this disease came from, we do not know how it spread, and we do not know whether it could be passed to humans." The last point seems to me the most worrying aspect of the problem. There is no evidence that people could be infected, but we cannot say there is no risk. Still, suspicions about infected feed were being kept confidential. It was only in May 1988 that Wild Smith was able to say, as data certainly as he could, that the agent at play in spreading BSE was the meat and bone meal. But more delays and secrecy were slowing the response to what was a growing crisis. Cows were still being infected, but there was no real urgency when it came to protecting human health. It would take 17 months for the MAF scientists who first identified the disease to pass the news to Britain's Chief Medical Officer, Sir Donald Acheson. Up until then, the Department of Health had brought into MAF discussions about the fact that infected cows were being fed to humans. Finally, officials asked to hear Acheson's thoughts on the potential risks of people eating infected cattle. He was worried and acted fast. At his request, a working party was set up to find out more. This group was headed by Sir Richard Southwood, a professor of zoology at Oxford University. The Southwood Party began its investigations, but in the meantime, it was obvious that steps needed to be taken to slow down the spread of the disease. In July 1988, feed containing meat and bone meal was banned. A second interim measure was the compulsory slaughter of cattle with suspected BSE. In this case, both their milk and carcasses would not be allowed into the food chain. Both decisions were good, but looking back on them today, it's easy to see issues that weren't widely known about at the time. For a start, although contaminated feed had been identified as the root cause, the ban on its use wasn't needed. Instead, farmers were given a 5-week grace period to use up their stocks, potentially infecting thousands of cows across the country. This laissez-faire rollout of the ban underplayed its importance. It seemed like a simple change in regulations. When the 5 weeks were up, farmers with feed left over continued to use it on the quiet. People also failed to appreciate how little meat and bone meal was needed for infection. A cow could develop BSE after eating infected tissue the size of a single pepper. On some farms where animal feed was mixed on site, farmers used the same machines to create their pig, poultry and cattle feed. This meant that infectious tissues going into food for pigs and chickens would then cross-contaminate the cattle feed in small amounts. So even when the BSE was seemingly eradicated from the animal food chain, cows were still being infected. Another issue was the compensation paid for lost cattle. Any cows with suspected BSE legally had to be slaughtered and incinerated, and under the Animal Health Act of 1981, this meant that farmers were entitled to compensation. In response to this, the chairman of the National Farmers Union, representing the farming community, asked the government to consider paying a lower rate of compensation for cows proven to be infected, but 100% of value if a cow was later found to have been perfectly healthy. In this instance, a farmer would essentially have slaughtered a valuable animal unnecessarily. What followed was a lot of ministerial back and forth as different departments debated who should be the ones to foot the bill. Much of this centered on whether this was a case of animal health, public health, or public morale. And because nobody really knew how big BSE might get yet, ministers couldn't know for sure how much money they were signing themselves up for. Eventually, it was held that farmers could expect to receive compensation at 50% of the market value of the cattle. At this time, future Prime Minister John Major was working as Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and in a letter approving the compensation scheme, he wrote, "My agreement to this course is due to the need to protect human health from the risk of this disease, not animal health." With the framework in place, if a farmer or vet suspected that a cow had BSE, they had to report it. A veterinary officer would then come to inspect the animal, and if it were found to be infected or even suspected of infection, they would be given the ominous sounding Form C, a notice of intention to slaughter. This required the animal be killed and the entitled owner be given compensation. Serving Form C was a big decision, and veterinary officers might visit a cow several times before finally deciding to pull the trigger. This lengthy process, resulting in only 50% of an infected cow's value of compensation, led to fears. Desperate farmers might be quietly sending suspect cows for slaughter rather than reporting them, and from there, they can enter the food chain undetected. In February of 1989, the Southwood Working Party shared the results of its investigation into the human implications of BSE with the House of Commons. They couldn't be sure, but the party concluded that there was very little risk to people, stating that the risk of transmission of BSE to humans appears remote and is therefore most unlikely that BSE will have any implications for human health. From the present evidence, it's likely that cattle will prove to be a dead-end host for the disease agent. Despite this, they included a brief request that doctors and pathologists be on the lookout for any increase in cases of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. The outward face of the government was unruffled. Based on what they knew of spray-being sheep, there was little cause for concern. In all the years that humans and sheep had coexisted, the disease had never left the barrier to infect people. But behind closed doors, some scientists were less convinced. They knew that it was possible for primal diseases to cross into humans, but by collective agreement, they mostly toed the party line. The danger was that any reassurances were based on nothing more than an assumption. If scrapie wasn't dangerous to humans, and BSE could be assumed to be a variant of scrapie, then they could also assume that BSE wasn't dangerous to humans. And as it appeared, that assumption was a big risk, and it was wrong. Asked later if he ever worried about disease making that leap, even John Wildsmith answered, "Please." As a precaution, in June 1989, the types of specified bovine offal considered most likely to be infectious were banned from use in human food. This included a cow's brain, spinal cord, and spleen. Up until now, coverage of BSE had been pretty much confined to farming and veterinary publications that are aware of it. The general public was massively worried. But with changes being made to the human food chain, public awareness began to rise. The press ramped up reporting of the so-called mad cow disease. British society was a long way off the mass panic we'd see later, but an element of unease was definitely creeping in. And this showed up in figures around buying behavior. Scientist Dr. Trevor Young conducted a survey into beef consumption at the time. Its sale was relatively constant up until the end of the 1980s. As awareness of BSE grew, there was a substantial fall in people eating beef. At the same time, sales of meat substitutes like tofu and pork soared. It's likely that even more people would have followed suit if they'd known what was actually in their beef burgers. Because yes, all those tasty bits of offal that nobody ever wanted to eat had been outlawed, but they were still making their way into food. The culprit was mechanically recovered meat, which was as gruesome as it sounds. Mechanically recovered meat, known as MRM, is essentially a byproduct of the conventional meat industry. After everything we recognized as food had been stripped off an animal's carcass, the residue, those scraps left behind, along with things like the spinal cord, were pressure blasted away from the bones. The result was a sort of meaty slurry. This was then used to bulk out meat products like burgers, sausages, and pies. There was even concern it was being used in school dinners. MRM was one of the great food technology developments of its time. It was entirely a matter of economics. In the 90s, the chief of trading standards, David Walker, looked into the practice, finding that mechanically recovered meat could be 10 times cheaper than oven, where a solid piece of flesh was worth around £3.30 per kilo. The equivalent MRM cost about 37 pence. MRM is such a problem in this story because it was almost impossible for an abattoir to remove all traces of that highly infectious spinal. When the carcass went through the process, sizable quantities still clung to the vertebrae and became mixed into the recovered meat. This issue became much bigger than it needed to be thanks to a catastrophic communications miss. The government formed a special advisory panel made up of expert scientists known as SEAC. This was the Spongiform Encephalopathy Advisory Committee. In their detailed paper, SEAC scientists assumed that spinal cord could be easily removed at an abattoir. And with this in mind, they felt it wasn't a big issue removed, and that was that. Math officials, on the other hand, took SEAC's attitude to mean that spinal cord wasn't a priority full stop, and that any stubborn tissues clinging on could be safely incorporated. Small amounts, but probably fine. Whatever the cause, bovine offal remained on the menu, and these parts of the cow were exactly where BSE like to live, right where its prion protein is not to be. But while everyone was distracted looking at the risks of cows and humans, BSE was about to make its first strike into British homes in a way that nobody could have expected. In May 1990, a pet Siamese cat was found to be suffering from a scrapey-like spongiform encephalopathy. With everyone being told that BSE was confined only to cows, it was an alarming development. If a cat could be infected, where else might the disease travel? What other barriers could it cross? By this time, quite a few major pet food brands had stopped using bovine offal voluntarily. After the first cat case emerged, Richard Packer, who was permanent secretary at MAF, went to see pet food manufacturers for himself. He found that their standards were higher than those held for human food. Tissues that had been eliminated from cat and dog food were still going into human food. And we've reached a truly bizarre moment in history where you'd be safer eating pedigree chunk than you would a frozen burger or budget range pie. Media coverage increased, and even if government ministers parroted that beef was safe, everyday people worried. Again, the chief medical officer, Donald Patterson, issued a statement that there was no reason not to eat British beef. It was this media storm that saw John Gummer staging the infamous burger eating I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. The incident looked contrived on film, but Gummer would later say it hadn't been planned. He'd simply been at an event when someone asked if he was so confident in his stance as Minister of Agriculture that he was prepared to allow his daughter to eat a burger. Gummer knew he was on a sneaky wicket. He claimed to the world that British beef was safe. Either he said no and undermined the whole campaign, or he said yes and fed her the burger. And as we know, he said yes. The public response to this was mixed. Some news outlets saw it as a bold gesture of assurance. Others asked, would you risk your child's health? As time went on, the image of John and Cordelia Gummer became almost symbolic of the government's bungled handling of BSE. In the same month, at a debate in the House of Commons, Labour MP David Clark made a damning speech condemning the official response to the crisis. He lambasted Gummer's actions, comparing him to the infamous Corporal Jones from the television series Dad's Army, stomping around and saying, don't panic, don't panic. Gummer was, he reminded the House, the same man who delayed restrictions around Chernobyl for 7 weeks, allowing tens of thousands of lambs contaminated with radioactivity to enter the food chain in 1986. In essence, the government's policy is simply that mad cow disease will in time go away. That's not a policy, but a hope and a prayer, said Clark. He quoted the government's own chief veterinary officer, Keith Meldrum, who stated that it was too early to say BSE posed no risk to man. The disease had only been around for a few years and had a long incubation period. There was every chance that BSE could make, and had made, the leap from cows to humans, but just hadn't shown up yet. Clark likened the disease to a doomsday scenario. He was shouted down, but much of what he said actually turned out to be true. Ministers, scientists, vets, none of them for sure knew what was going to happen, but there was nothing to do but wait and see what was right. BSE had become a ticking time bomb. It wouldn't be long before it blew up in everyone's faces. In November 1994, Stephen Churchill was 19 years old. He was on a shopping trip with his mum, Dot. when he stopped off to eat at a cafeteria. Back in the car, Dot asked Stephen if he'd enjoyed it, but he had no memory of it at all. Stephen had been withdrawn and depressed for months. In August that year, he crashed his car with no explanation for what had happened. He was prescribed antidepressants, but the family spent a miserable Christmas, and on the 3rd of January 1985, Stephen's parents demanded that he be seen again. By this time, he was losing coordination and could no longer write his own name. Stephen was admitted to hospital, and on the 13th of February 1985, doctors finally diagnosed CJD, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. That's the naturally occurring human form of BSE and scrapie that I mentioned earlier. It usually emerged in older patients, those over 60, so everyone was surprised that they had suddenly struck someone so young. The case was seen as unusual and tragic, but not medically significant. Perhaps Stephen was just very, very unlucky. For him, though, it was a death sentence. CJD was incurable and fatal. David and Dot Churchill could only take their son home, make him as comfortable as possible, and wait for him to pass away, which he did on the 21st of May. Today, Stephen's death is recorded as the first form of the CJD variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease caused by BSE. At the time, it passed almost without mention. The Churchill's loss was chalked up as natural causes. But as 1995 progressed, Stephen was no longer the only fit and healthy young adult to fall. A so-called anomaly of the CJD cropped up again in 2 young deaths. Now there were 3 cases, and the chances of them all being road events seemed less and less likely. Yet still, officials insisted that British beef was safe. Finally, at the start of 1996, the storm broke. John Collins, a prion disease expert and a new member of the government's scientific advisory committee, was at a conference in Paris. He received an urgent call summoning him back. Brain samples taken from the suspicious CJD cases had revealed the alarming news. This wasn't sporadic CJD, but variant CJD. It was rather like preparing for war. In an underground incident room at the Department of Health, Collins and his colleagues discussed what could be done. While government ministers panicked, they began working out calculations on a flip chart. Together, they came up with 4 possible next steps: complete cow annihilation, cow culls, changes in abattoir rules, and beef product recalls. The choices were sent to Downing Street and Britain's Prime Minister, John Major. Major responded, asking them to suggest just one course of action. He simply wanted the experts to tell him what to do, and so, on their advice, changes were made to how older cows and the meat from the cow heads was processed. After this, Collins estimated the residual risk was likely to be very small. But even if the government managed to contain the spread, they couldn't hold back the story any longer. On the 20th of March 1996, the Secretary of State for Health, Stephen Dorrell, was forced to announce that they'd got it wrong. BSE could and did infect people. There were now 10 known cases. The outcry was immediate. The public felt scared and betrayed. The Daily Mirror ran with the headline, "BSE can kill humans." Beef consumption fell even further, and a week later, the European Union enacted a worldwide ban on British beef exports that would remain in place for the next 10 years. Confidence in the Tory government blew away overnight. However much reassurance came down from on high, though, it was all too late. People had been told over and over again that beef was safe, and suddenly it wasn't. Why should they trust anything else that anyone told them? And the waiting was the worst. Those who'd eaten beef and to their families knew that the damage might already be done. They couldn't reverse things now, and there was no treatment, even if they did develop the disease. Nothing could be certain. So in the space left by a lack of answers, doom-mongering calculations sprang up. In worst-case scenarios, the suggested number of deaths ranged between 500,000 and 1 million people. This wasn't the first time prion disease ripped through a population. In the 1950s, a disease called Kuru began killing the 4 people of Papua New Guinea. This was another type of transmissible spongiform encephalopathy, essentially a variant of the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease under another name. It was traced back to ritual cannibalism, the practice of cooking and eating deceased family members to help free their spirit. Kuru most likely spread after a villager developed sporadic CJD, the rare type of disease in existence, and his brain was eaten by others, and was largely localized within the 4 people and wasn't widely known. But history has shown that these type of diseases could be shared and with deadly results. In Britain, as the 90s closed out, cattle deaths from BSE fell, but human fatalities rose. In the year 2000, VCJD reached its peak with 28 deaths in just 1 year. This was nowhere near the numbers predicted in the mass panic of 1996, but it was still too many. After this, fatalities slowly fell, and it's now been almost a decade since the last human death from VCJD back in 2016. Today, 178 deaths have been attributed to VCJD, around 180,000 cows were affected, and over 4.4 million slaughtered to control the outbreak. These are devastating numbers, and in the midst of the chaos, people wanted someone to blame. They wanted to know how it could have been allowed to happen. In 1997, Labour swept aside the Conservatives in post-war history's biggest landslide. One of its first actions was to call an inquiry into the BSE scandal led by Lord Phillips. A year was set aside for investigations. It took 3. Finally, Phillips' findings were shared in the year 2000. The report itself makes for some pretty damning reading. It does not shy away from placing blame where blame was due, but it also gives the benefit of the doubt to certain key players. Importantly, the inquiry found that the government did not lie to the public about BSE. Phillips concluded that those in power really did think that the risks to humans were remote, that this campaign of reassurance was a mistake. It was no wonder that Britain felt betrayed. If you ask most people now, they'll say that BSE is a thing of the past, an unpleasant chapter of history that we're all very happy to close. The families of those affected still grieve and still search for answers. It will never be over with them. But the rest of us can forget. For many, British beef is back on the menu. Burgers, steaks and pies have become everyday meals again. From the scandal of BSE, we have tighter controls over what can and can't go into our food chain, and we now have the Food Standards Authority. Beef is officially safe. But what if it's all too little, too late? Because, shockingly, there's a compelling case that VCJD is very much with us, and like some sort of bovine sleeper agent, the disease might just be biding its time, waiting for the right moment to make a catastrophic comeback. In November 2013, the House of Commons assembled a panel of expert witnesses, doctors and professors with specific experience in prone diseases. Among them was John College, who was one of the first to confirm cases of VCJD back in 1996. As part of the Q&A session, the panel discussed the future risk to public health, startling detail emerged. For several years, John College had studied the Kuru epidemic in Papua New Guinea. That's the CJD cannibalism case that I mentioned earlier. While some sufferers there died within just a few years of infection, others experienced incubation periods of over 55 years. Clearly, there's a massive difference between the incubation timing for some people compared to others. This isn't just a chance, it's a matter of genetics. The key lies in certain amino acids within the body. In Britain, those who fell ill with VCJD during its first few years all had the MM genotype in both cattle and people. This is linked with a short incubation period. Symptoms tend to show up relatively quickly within 5 to 7 years. But only around 40% of the UK population has this MM genotype. For those with others, known as MV or VV genotypes, there's a much longer average incubation period. During the Kuru outbreak, the potential time frame of 50 plus years was for human-to-human transmission, humans giving the disease to each other. In cases of cross-species transmission, like BSE, incubation periods are usually longer anyway. This means that for some people with a certain genotype, the animal-to-human incubation period can actually extend beyond their lifespan. In a nutshell, they die of natural causes before showing any symptoms at all. This could be a good thing, right? If VCJD doesn't have time to manifest, we could argue it doesn't really matter. Those people never have to suffer in the way that other patients did. And that's all well and good, as long as those long-term carriers can't pass it on to others. Unfortunately though, as College pointed out at the time, we can't really be sure of this. People have been known to walk around with infectious diseases like cholera and typhoid without realizing, but all the time, they pose a serious risk to anyone they could come into contact with. If VCJD is the same, carriers could live to be 100 while showing no signs of the high-level infectious prions in their tissues. If they donate blood or organs, contaminate surgical instruments or needles, roots, cut themselves, they could be infecting others in a week. In 2013, research by the Health Protection Agency estimated that 1 in 2,000 people in the UK is a silent carrier of the CJD. That's between 20 and 30,000 people within the population. But Collins actually doubts that figure, saying, quote, there is really no way of knowing that at the moment, so it could be a significant underestimate of the number of infected individuals. In fact, there's a huge amount we still don't know about BSE and the CJD. We don't know for sure where it came from or when it started. We don't know how it managed to kill a small number of vegetarians. We don't know why, out of the thousands of people who probably ate infected beef, only some seem to get ill. The only thing we do know is the impact it's had for the families and friends of the CJD victims. It'll never go away, and all those questions and uncertainties only make it worse. Frances Hall, whose son Peter was one of the first to contract the disease in 1996, has spent years working with other bereaved families. She said, quote, the effect is like no other illness. Somehow, you can come to terms with losing someone through an accident or a natural disease, but these families feel their child had been murdered, yet nobody is going to be punished or given apologies. BSE and cow disease was a scandal that defined the late 20th century. There's every chance it's not over yet. It's died down, yeah, but it's not died out. The final outcome is how many cases are still to come, or when it might, at last, end. If it ever does. Thanks for watching.
Katana, and this guy is going fist. Nah, he's using the green relic on Wilder. And now myself I'm going fist and health. Norway or England? Wait, we have Ironite poison skill. Oh, I forgot to update it, guys. That's fine. And have the poison on character skill. Yo, let's do something. Change this for a challenge where you don't use Dormant. In the new save Wallace, we didn't have any Dormant. Because we had no relics. We didn't find any. Because in this save, so I don't really have your main relics. Nah, I don't route for anybody. It's not coming home for England. Yeah, I'll run to come back with. Welcome back. Where is the healthy? In this build, I could also go Dash and I have these steps. I think I have pieces. You see the shop. You think England got a chance? They won't get a chance. I think they will go on penalties. Oh, Lady League, how we doing? I think they'll go on penalties. I think.
Say wallahi, bro. Say wallahi.
They will what? Did you buy the HP one at the shop? No. The HP one is on the shop now. But the Rock's vigor and endurance and dexterity is in the shop. God damn, dude. Nice. What do you think of Argentina versus Egypt? Did they go robbed? If I speak, I am in big trouble. If I speak, I am in big trouble. Yeah, random gambling. The one with vigor, affinity, and HP, yes. We don't talk about that one, dude. Yeah, only know something. How we do it. Danish. I'm thinking as well. Just trying to survive the heat. My room is an oven. I'm doing alright, dude. Thank you for asking. Holy tracking, what the fuck? Tracking up, dude. Use some bit of max. Sure. Magic +4, better affinity +2. Are you right? Just making sure. It's like 2% more magic +4, better than affinity +4, affinity +2. Can attack finisher? I'm out. You messed up your sleep schedule. You woke up in the heat after like 5 hours of sleep. Dude, the heat is messing everybody, dude. God damn. God damn. Guys, you know what's the greatest thing about summer? That it finishes. That's the greatest thing. Have you watched GSM 11? Of course, dude. Greatest football angle ever. That'll be fall next? Nah, wait. Isn't that winter best? No. No. Where is that fist, I guess? Where is fist and Bombasta? But when I was a kid, I was trying to produce extra blaze fire tornado. Come on, guys, peak moments. Fire tornado. Classic indeed. Yo, sounds not good. How's it going? How we doing? How weird. What do we have though? Grafted science. Deep. You think all good? Oh my god. Nice. Very easy choice. That's what I'm talking about. If you did good, guys, I am doing good too. What you have here? Hey, yo. Well, 80 fist? I guess not. Oh, the Darth Vader sounds good. Come on, dude. You're so bored. No. Play a game that doesn't make you bored. I guess. Oh, that makes you bored. Watch a movie. Yeah, damn, dude. Thank you. Come out. Yo, bone day for it. Appreciate it. You can't watch movies alone, you skip most of the movies. You go to the gym. I guess. Try. You have no money. Train at home. Yo, Sam, what's up, dude? How you doing? What's it? Yeah, I'm doing amazing, Sam. I really appreciate that. Thank you for asking. I don't really have any complaints. Just the heat. Other than that, really good. Thank you so much for asking. Yo, Astro, what's up, dude? How's it going? D-Trade Farms? Not directly, no. I should know. Good, good. Back from a hiking trip. Ooh, very nice. How's the trip? The W trip. Taking some holidays. Nice, good. Well-deserved holidays. Before I'm training in abs, they end up spending way too long in the gym. No, maybe. Oh, I'm just doing them at the start. Honestly, the only one who nails the Arabic pronunciation of your name when speaking English, Saber. What did people say? Like if that would be like Arabic, wouldn't it be better like Samir? You would love to hike in the mountains, but the biggest mountain here is like 15 meters. 15 meters. Bro, climbing he starts. Oh, same you.
Thank you.
Oh, same you. The first or the second? Yeah, well, I think it's like this. Good shit. Of the item bonus. The second one, oh, same you. Oh, makes sense. Yeah, I just, that makes more sense. Makes more sense. The items pronounce it in a broken way. It's not broken way. It's not a hard name. How could you mess up? Yo, I'm doing well. How about yourself? It was relaxing. Let me show you a picture. You took a picture. Oh, it's not good. I've never been hiking in my life. And in fact, I've never been to one day. You use Google Translate? Oh, I see. There are bandits in Europe. Son. Ronaldo. Hello. Started. Yeah, see, you remember the guy on the racetrack getting yelled by his coach constantly screaming at Samir? Let's see if I can catch up with Merchant. Are Queen and Yuna together? Are they together? You mean if they do it? Have you seen the meme? No, I have not. What's that mean? Do what? Train the gym together? What are you thinking? She's so much bigger than him. Yeah, that's exactly why. The queen is training Yoda. She's teaching him how to train the gym. Because Yoda is very skinny right now. I should have saved money. I'm so stupid. He's saying this, but alright. Sure. Okay, I need some damage engagement and full place. Should be the shop we're going to spot. Less likely. Sage. Any wilting climate. Sage. Sage.
Are you running, bro? Yeah. Where's your health, bro? Top left. I actually I have more HP than both of my wilders. Your teammates? Yeah, I have more HP. I mean, I have 11 HP up relics, right? They don't have it, so I have to do a lot to have more HP than them. Wow, they have it.
Are the relic stats random?
Yeah, you basically have to get lucky.
Bro, like having Dacia, bro. Get lucky on your relics, bro.
Now I should show some goodwill and give this guy damage negation at full.
Wow, being a good teammate, that's insane, bro.
I'm the only one who thinks that Session is has.
You don't want that full? You really don't want the full.
It's like a hard movie, right?
No, it's okay.
Psychology movie.
Can you just not ping it?
It's about a Sith that fucked up his friend to make her love him, then he gets sad. What?
Both of your teammates that same guy, bro?
It's Julius, and then Julius is coach. What? It's actually inspired me, bro. Inspired me.
You know, guys, no spoilers.
What, bro?
I would for sure watch that movie.
What is he getting coached on? Fucking Elden Ring?
That was not that
Bro, where is this out?
It's the bottom of the screen.
Isn't he dead?
I thought she just
Or is he the other one?
Kenny, 1, 2, 3. Sure.
Ah, he's getting jumped.
Please give me DNF. Son. Oh, that's really good though. Oh, he's DNF.
Do I be greedy here and do we kill Libra?
You're watching tomorrow.
We probably have ult, which makes me think that we could
I
probably
hope you
kill
enjoy it,
Libra.
Fuzz. I hope you enjoy it.
Watch this. This is called a heal running. So you can like super sprint while healing. So like normally if I want to heal, I have to slow down and heal like this, right? Where with sprint healing, I could heal while running. So it's optimal.
Animation type?
Yeah, it's not like really hard to do either. Okay, I gotta make sure.
Any goddamn DNF, please? Fucking hell. Yo, Ronnie with the 6 whole months. Thank you so much, dude. Also, hi. Guys, can you get some note? Thank you so much for all the 6 whole months.
Dragon.
I appreciate the support. Thank you, dude. 6 more subs to go for the juicy daily sub as well. Thank you so much, guys. How's it going, everyone? I hope you did well. Yo, Alice.
So there's a tag for Executor where once he sheaves,
How you doing?
he gets like the iframes, right?
That's not enough.
So on like big attacks where I know I want to hit with my main weapon afterwards, I'll pull out my curse sword. I'm using ult to stop him from charging because he's gonna stall for time.
You did.
I'll pull out my curse sword and I'll like deflect. I'll use the like sheath putting back animation to basically get my main weapon out.
Animation cancel?
It's kind of animation cancelled, but it's like intended for
Join in the world.
No, so it's just a part of his base kit. It's just like a reset.
But you have to like know what you can deflect and what you can't.
It's just the animation. It's like,
trying to tell him to do
Hockey.
the
Hockey had a nice time.
usual.
what's the point of even killing a bunch of bosses and stuff?
You want dormant powers, which you need new passives. You see how I have this? So that makes it means that I deflect, it gives me damage negation. This is a good weapon for him. Melee attack power just means every melee hit has this gives me HP. I'm probably gonna drop this is pretty useless. The successive attacks means we hit like multiple attacks in a row.
So you're looking for parry stuff basically for your build?
This is the only like parry specific thing that only this character and one other character can use.
I just ignore them.
Do you always build out the one thing?
It's like random, but yeah, I'm looking for Rivers of Blood because it's like the strongest weapon you can get for him.
Oh, so it's just based on characters.
Then this is a Knight Invader, so they're basically NPCs that you can kill, and there's a relic that gives you a damage buff when you kill them. They also drop a lot of money, and they also have a chance to give you good damage negation passes. Like damage negation at 4 HP will stop you from getting a shot. Usually, this is their best, but usually you want to like kill everything on the way, so you don't get ganked.
Right now, I'm running Fist or Tricephalus, but most build go for like a holy build, do them to holy. The most like basic build is to be like either default Ignite Bow with Catalyst +1 and just 50 +1 EP, or double balancer, Catalyst +1 and indeed you got
So somebody spawned outside.
and you could dump out
Show up here.
dump out sight. Probably the most broken build, you know.
And you guys do a lot of damage with that.
Yep, that's our 9 videos for you. But we haven't killed them yet.
It should be sold, it should be Abyss Watches.
You gonna take it? I want the max HP up because I have more HP than both of them right now. So I get the HP up gives you 10% more HP and it scales with how much HP you have.
Yeah, because it's percentage, right? I know that.
No, this is day 2. No negation though, but
And then for this,
damage negations. And they have 2 free slots. What is that inventory?
I can use this as a way to get out of my ult, but he was on the ground. NPCs have immunity when they're knocked, just like player characters.
Not expensive. Sun. Ronin with the gifted to Volley. Thank you so much, Ronin. Guys, can you get some dub in the chat for Ronin with the gifted? Thank you so
I'll
much.
actually
You have to
do
do that.
these.
That's my kind of you.
Oh, I hate not playing Wilder and having to fat roll through fucking poison
Thank you so
though.
much. That's so kind of you.
Holy rage bait.
That's really, really kind of you. 5 more subs for a juicy daily sub goal. And we'll be 25 days on that juicy daily sub streak. Thank you so much,
Which I can
guys.
heal stir, which I
Really
can't.
appreciate it.
Poison.
Thank you everyone for both the resub and the gifted. Sure, you
But right here, you know there's 2 bosses that spawn here, so like really soon I'm gonna go to the castle.
Surely. Who is Shirley?
So like the angle where you're supposed to go
Are you strong enough to kill all the bosses? So just kill everything.
Yeah.
Wait, she gets pancaked by Lance Ball? Oh, these effects. That's fine.
My control is actually his own.
Can see shit. Also, people say jumping while running is in the optimal because you're like you can waste stamina, but when you jump, you get iframes on your legs. So if something like hits you and it's like a jumpable attack, then you can jump over it.
Downside makes much. That's really kind of evil. Not that nice. But I listened to the song you sent on the music channel. The Scala Blade has such a nice
We just gotta go kill whatever boss is on the top.
The final boss song?
Like we farmed everything that we could.
Yeah, makes sense. That sounds like
So I'm assuming he's going for a parry build because they both have their shields. And a Sapphire Bird on the top. I have 40 on the slam. Can you check the shot? I can't check the shot. I should have leveled up to 14.
Why they made it so sexual. Still making a banger OSD. I mean, it's also a good game, like, combat is good. The main character is good.
Oh, we missed everything. Standard race. This half HP is gonna rush to the holds.
Noise.
Alright.
You might drop deeper now.
So that didn't do any damage, but
yeah, sometimes taking a break
Evolution,
is the best
it
one.
basically like knocks you to the ground. If you parry it or deflect it, then it'll like go do a backwards jump, which I could have unlocked to like. Shit, that's actually pretty good. Oh, for that at least. I already have pretty decent damage distribution. Like a skill up, conjure up the spawn up the Wicked Opinion.
Sandy would love it.
But Julius and Julius's coach, man. Yes, is actually trying me.
And this challenge is kind of long, so. Kind of longish.
I think this is a circle gonna be like right here.
Is the skin suit even allowed in for each other?
The top circle. We probably should fight the red boss first. We'll probably have enough time because we're doing good damage.
The other thing is the DLC. My son was OSD.
Do you have a strong build right now?
Yeah, it's alright. It could be stronger, but I'm putting on like survivability relics. Like I could have all physical attack up, but I'm choosing to have like max HP up and physical damage negation, which it's possible to get like all max HP ups and physical damage negation with physical attack up, but I'm just not that lucky because you have to roll 3 effects that all have bad effects, by the way, and you can't roll something like continuous HP loss because that's gonna fuck you over. Or like taking damage gives you death blood buildup. Death blood will like instantly one-shot you no matter what. Which I'm pretty sure Duchess could probably iframe the death blood buildup with her relics.
Let's go.
And I'm switching to my cursed sword here, so because the cursed sword does more crit damage, which is like when they're glowing yellow.
That dude is running green.
And they're like knocked down.
Let's see if he
He'll
can
probably kill Leona here
beat
too, because there's nothing else to do. See if I can line claw her. Missed. And stunned her. Nothing to help me. Missed the right.
Don't do advise.
Okay, yeah, I don't have any negation against magic.
So you just ult him.
Okay. What the hell? I see me out.
Did you get knocked?
Yeah, he did. Should probably just... I think they're both low.
Did that guy get knocked?
Oh shit, like that.
Wait, beat from there.
Cool, you are cooked.
Yeah, I do.
No, I tried doing the tech. I think he had something that was giving him like more damage in the storm. Yeah, he had 100% I tried. I probably shouldn't go back for the runes because I don't have my ult. That might be a throw because it is Moog.
Now you're back alive. How do you lose?
You lose when you when all of you are down. So that, because it is in final circle, that's why it's fine for me to be
So there's no permadeath right now?
I think it's permadeath.
Okay.
If you get down and you don't get res, it's permadeath. This guy has my shit,
Yeah,
yo.
one tap anyway, doesn't matter if you attack
Okay. That
Did he
is,
die?
I don't have Twiggy either. Yeah, I'm gonna be Twig Bar if I go down one more time. Yo! That's fucking teabagging me. Oh, I really want my runes,
Holy flask restoration!
but I can't get
What the
it.
fuck? But
How lucky, bro. Knocked it.
I think I took a couple of flask restoration improvements. Yo, what's up, dude? How we doing today? How we doing, bud?
Hello?
Son. You lead the blades. That's where they go to. I can't get the green though. I will stand. Sometimes the head input just goes into the ground, dude. Check this. Hello. He might be coming. Yeah, he's coming. Classical Eagles indeed. You ulti? Yeah. You did. Kinda missed them. Oh, I got ulti, dude. That guy's too bad. Get him. Never mind. Holy clowns, those here. Wait, yeah, they bugged it. That's not part of your combo. Jeez.
in, what are you doing?
We're at Anime Expo and I'm selling BL. But some are a little bit controversial. One of the stories made of the night is like, oh, you peasant, get on your back. Oh.
So this is my Japanese friend.
Yeah, in Japanese, BL is really popular too.
What the? Is that ultimate? Where are we in, what are you doing?
We're at Anime Expo and I'm selling BL. But some are a little bit controversial.
I find my drive in 2 words. The first one's positivity, the second one's accountability.
About 8 or 9 years ago, I broke my back and I thought I went paralyzed. I am so blessed to be able to move and to push my body every single day and see what it's.
12 seconds later.
If you're a small creator under like 2,000, 3,000 followers, here are some ratings.
Cash. Each owe you tonight. That paper, you never saw it. You feel me? Think about them little ones at home, boy. 10 bands, that's meat on the table for a year. So, what's it gonna be? Hey, smart boy. Knew you'd come around. Welcome to the family, boy. Sponge? Yo, you took it? Bro, after everything, that man robbed us, dog. You sold us out, man, for 10 bands. Nah, I can't even look at you right now.
Chill, Pat. I took it so he trusts me, dog. Now I'm family. Now I'm in the room. We ain't done. We just getting started on God.
Oh, you sneaky little... I'm with you. What's the move, bro?
Aye. Underpaying us was just the appetizer. Yo, 2 sets of books? This man been cooking the numbers for years. Tax fraud, ghost workers, dirty money, it's all here, bro. Nah, this ain't no fire no more. This a prison bid right here. Real talk, boss. How long you been skimming that payroll? I'm just trying to learn from the genius, feel me?
12 years, boy. 2 sets of books, ghosts on the payroll, skim millions, and paging peanuts. And nobody ever caught old Krabs. RRR!
You got every word, big dog.
Mr. Krabs, on 12 counts of fraud and wage theft, this court finds you guilty. Your assets are seized, effective immediately. And the man who brought this to light, Mr. Squarepants, will assume control of the company. This court is adjourned. We did it, bro! You the boss now!
Nah, Pat. We the boss. First one up, we bring the other with us. You forgot? You my partner. 50-50. On everything, bro.
You're right, bro. We the boss. We came up. Together, fam. 10,000. Cash.
Gamers, right, we're back with some more Boulder. What we're running, we are running Dregs of Seppuku using the Balancer Relic. We've got a cool incantation and a semi-balancer executor. Cool. An incantation not just is you don't see that. I don't find anyway. Obviously I play just incantation with Mom. She's probably my favourite person to play incantations with. So yeah, that's pretty cool. No, just you leave that to the business, dude. Come on. Play the game, dude. Let's go and do that. Even better. They just aggroed every single level. Coffee machine has the right idea. Using a basic build, of course she has the right idea. Too good for me. It's not good for me. Give me that booty! That's lead, man. Yeah, let's see if you do that bit. Definitely not gonna die doing that. As he says, as he nearly dies. Let's do that. Is it got him? Let's see how good my teammates are. They drop me some swords. I can't find that, can I? No, but you do need to drinks. All drinks at some point. I'm not gonna be bothered. I'm gonna be able to look for a second. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. Now they're just gonna see what it feels like to not have a decent weapon to play with. Night of the Fallen. Is that Undertaker? That's the bird. Birdman. I guess. You can revive him, I don't want to lose my stacks. I'm going to go here, do a wall and drinks pop build. You know what? That's how I'm going to use that. I'm going to use lightning slash whacker's ashes. Make that a +2. That seems like a fun weapon to use. Hey, that's pretty good. Taking damage and a lightning slash. I'll see shit. And then, of course, as soon as I decide to do one else, he kills me. So annoying. For that, we don't get on that great squad. Right, fuck, he was gonna one-shot me. Bro, I'm playing so bad. Please don't bring me alive. Keep my dregs. Oh, I'm not playing well at all here. Get them for now, get rid of that. Because they might actually be the choice of what we use. We've already got some armaments on 18%, and then obviously that's got lightning and power in, so both of those will be fine to keep. Push back here. Cool. Go for it, lightning. Discussion full. Not ideal. Not in the shop, it looks it. There's a lightning attack power in the shop though. Maybe we will go for some lightning in.
Don't buy pouches, I like pouches. Let's go make a heal up. That's stacked, that's good. Level 7. Sure, I guess. Come here, Luke, goblin. What's wrong with doing that boss up there? Who are finding a full ball? Okay, so day 1. Sense big demon. What do you do? 3, 3, 1. That's not great. So maybe this is the thing that we do. Get pushed into that. Yeah, stop doing this. Okay, you got Bruce Blood, dude. I've got Dagger as well, I'm gonna successive as well, dude. No way I'm not giving that on. It's a no-brainer because you have that. Cool. Media attack power is obviously what we want. Probably gonna lose stacks here. Oh, this one. Should be back to one. So, no, we've got a 10 still. Right. All right now. We've got no damage negation, so let's make sure we don't get watch here. Some shit. Dodging. Okay, it's got like 1500. It's fine. Make this a +2, obviously. So it's not great damage. Maybe this won't be the choice we use. That's great for us, really. That's why you don't run off, good master. There's no point rushing, dude. Don't worry about it. No, we can take it. Cool. So physical negation. Tap out forward would be great, but we ain't going to get any damage negation. We keep a little bit. 9, 3, 2, that's not bad damage. Didn't miss, that's great stuff. That's crazy, almost a team wipe. Not rock below max, I don't really want rock below max, not really. Go on, we're gonna stick to it. Sorry, that just Bro. The tracking on that is insane. We'll get wrecked. Physical. Not a lot, I don't think. All things considered. Bro, this exec is out, non-stop dying, bro. Right, next more. Dying to Valbro, which was executor. That's crazy. The lights is not back here. Red? No. Can't get hit by his backswing as well, so we'll get headed. So I need to go in here and plus 2. Parry in there. Around there equals pretty well. And skill and set power, we'll take another of that. Just let you push it for 2 seconds. Get yeeted. Okay, no free on this, it's fine, it's what it is. Cool. We made it. Luckily. Oh, shite. There's our proof. High price miss. Yeah, I get damage though. Does it kill me? Oh, I swiped it in. Bro, I dodged that. Just one in, I'll take it. Right, obviously I was going to take it, wasn't I? I guess we'll stick to our lightning slash. Basically the same thing, isn't it? But just lightning slash a bit more weaker. And it does cause frost. I missed. Maybe this isn't the play. But that's not the play there, is it? Fancy shit. And heal up so we can poisoned. Shouldn't hit if I just stand here. Okay, 1200. Oh, okay, 16. That's fine. That was almost a team wipe. Oh god. Oh god, they're all dead. There's another team wipe. Get wipes. Get wrecked executor. It's going to be a loot goblin. Go and check this thing pushing across to me. God skin, we'll take that, put it off there. Actually, that could so much check that out. Check over there. Take it, fuck it. What's the tap out? That's crazy work. Please let me get out there. Poison's gonna kill me. Also, one thing come in. That is crazy tag team work, that is. Cool. Physical attack barriers. Yeah, it's pretty run. Not a big match. Okay, we can't get hit here by Bulldog for obvious reasons. We get one shot. And that's good. Okay, it's Ebadar. Anyone else who might jump tricks? I don't have chat voice. Oh, a lot. Okay, it's fine. You reckon there? Some bullshit. The fucking thing followed me in a circle. I'm not going to get poisoned here. I'm not going to get ready to. I hate this move. Probably the worst move. Especially when he comes in like this. I'm saying that. Bro, how am I supposed to avoid that really? 14-1, I called it. Oh no, the goat survived. We got another chance. 14-1, this is crazy. He's gonna parry it. It leaves. He doesn't leave. Bring me back to life, just I'll save myself already. But I got no, I'll just go full half now. I got no damage occasion, there's no property lying on the floor. Watch your careful. Goated. What an absolute chat. Bro, this move. Okay. Not any damage. This is crazy work. Bro, what is that? What is that? How did that even hit me? How did that hit me? That is crazy work. Please don't revive me here, just because you know what's going to happen. Oh, this is crazy. Okay, that's based. Dutch is absolutely carrying. This is crazy work. What are you moving on to? So, enough of that bullshit. I'm done with your bullshit, dude. I'm absolutely done with your horse shit. Get it? Horse shit. My controller's dying! My controller's dying! Oh, that was close. My controller's dying again? No, it's not. That was insane. Oh, who dies twice a full floor, bro? Oh, man. Who dies to full floor? Well done, Duchess. At least we won. Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, insane. Crazy build. Balance is up, Duchess is okay.
What builds are meta for Duchess as of this point in Nightraign's lifespan? This is a daunting question to answer because she can seemingly use anything and it still be some level of viable. However, of course, some builds are definitely better than others, so in today's video I want to share with you a handful of builds that I consider to be truly meta for her, whether that be for teams of 3, solo runs, or when you just started a new account and you need good builds early. Before we begin, there's a few disclaimers I need to get out of the way. Any build made up predominantly or entirely of RNG relics will be handled 2 different ways. We'll cover both the peak of what the build is capable of, as well as the baseline. One will help you get the build off the ground and functional as quick as possible, and the other will give you an idea of what you're aiming for when it comes to getting direct upgrades to those baseline relics. Second, and most importantly, the best build for you to make is the kind that you will enjoy playing. While a meta discussion video doesn't necessarily care about how much fun these builds are, you have to remember what Nightreign is, which is effectively an arcade game-esque DLC to Elden Ring that does not need to be taken very seriously. Advice I could certainly heed myself. As such, do not ruin your own enjoyment of the game because there is apparently a bigger fish in the pond. With those out of the way, let's go ahead and begin. Let's start off simple. What if you just started a Duchess account and you don't have any RNG relics to work with? What are some powerful guaranteed relic builds that will both expedite the process of unlocking Deep of Night as well as do well within its ranks? By this criteria, I think that there are 3 builds that make the most sense. Now, I don't want to say too much about the first 2 because they will come up again in the meta proper section here in a bit. But we need to mention them because they are the easiest meta builds to get off the ground, those being skill spam and crit stack. Duchess is a premier character for making the most out of the double balancer meta. With a large mana bar and restage to exacerbate burst damage, she is perfect for this playstyle. As such, both of the balancer relics are a given, but what do you make the 3rd relic? When limiting ourselves to just guaranteed relics, I think there are 2 that make the most sense. First being Caligo for particularly lazy gamers. But to be serious, it does help tremendously with points of interest where small enemies might gank you and kill you very easily. Going invisible over and over and having Frostbite to restage is a very nice coupling. However, if you ever get rid of your starting dagger and don't have another Frostbite weapon lined up to use, then this will
essentially be a dead relic on your build. In those cases, if you want to avoid that, I recommend the second relic, being the Golden Dew. Increasing restage's damage is always nice, but the main reason we're using it is for this second line of text here. Only 3 relics in the game get it, and don't get me wrong, all of them can work for this build, but I chose the Golden Dew because of the restage buff. This line of text is a little bit misleading. It reads as though things like Greases and Scholar's Armament, etc. are only getting a buff, but this is not the case. As long as it is elemental damage tied to a weapon or coming from a weapon, it is going to get a 10% damage bonus. This pairs perfectly with what Duchess is trying to do on a skill build, because the majority of the best Ashes of War in the game are doing some type of elemental damage. So to put it simply, if you want things to be easier on the first day when you're doing points of interest, go with the Caligo relic. But if you want more value when you have found the Ash of War that you're looking for, go for the Golden Dew. Unfortunately, things are not as clear-cut when it comes to making a crit stack build. There are plenty of options, but they don't combine together quite as well as you would hope. The single best crit relic in the game is the Everdark Adele relic, because it's the only one that can have 2 instances of improved crit damage on it. However, the +1 version, which only it and the base Adele relic have, do not stack together, unfortunately. And this relic here from the Collector Signboard is a single hair away from being a completely optimal relic for Duchess if she's running crit. So, reason would stand that you would try to run both of these on the same build, but we've run into a bit of a problem. The last crit relic does not fit the goblet that Duchess has available. Also, what if you started your account on a week that Everdark Adele is not available? If this is the situation you're in, I recommend this combination here. It has plenty of crit damage as well as a bunch of different effects that are useful for the build anyhow. However, your eventual goal will be to go to double red-green, where you can have both of these relics on it. You could make the second red relic just another guaranteed relic for the time being, but you're going to be hoping to get an RNG red relic that has critical hit on it. Now, I can see this third build here raising a few eyebrows. This combination here results in the most amount of extra health you can get on Duchess with a single build, as well as plenty of other useful effects. I can imagine people saying something to the effect of, Duchess is a class cannon that's meant to amplify burst damage, why would you turn her into Wilder from Timu? But hear me out on this one. It's not meta in the normal sense of doing a lot more damage. It is very valuable in its own unique way, that being practicing against enemies you're not good against. I don't know about you, but I'm personally not good at every single enemy and boss in this game. I would rather fight a Blackblade Kindred at level 1 than a red Grafted Scion at level 15. And in a game mode like Deep of Night, where every insignificant attack is almost certainly going to one-shot you, it's easy to play stressed out and make bad decisions because you're too worried about getting annihilated. In situations like these, where you clearly have some problem matchups, I recommend the health stack. Just being able to actually stomach some hits is everything when it comes to practicing. And while this setup does sacrifice a lot of damage, and by proxy make your runs a lot slower, you have to remember that the only way to truly lose an expedition is to die at the end of any of the 3 days, and weapon buffs that give you extra defense in one way or another are not guaranteed, especially in solo. So, if you're having a bad day and just can't seem to dodge anything properly, or you're actually looking for a specific enemy to get better at, consider putting the health stack on and keep it in your back pocket for one of those rainy days. There's one more category we need to go over before talking about the meta builds, those being the givens. When talking about optimizing any of the meta builds, you're going to see some recurring effects that we might as well explain now, because they will find themselves onto almost every single optimized build. And it will be more surprising to see them missing than it will be to see them there. The first effect, and the most omnipresent, is the invincibility on restage effect. This is single-handedly the most game-changing effect in the entire game. Many people mistake it as simply a get-out-of-jail-free card from escaping either grabs or true combos, but this is not by any means the best use case for it. No, the best way to use the invincibility is to artificially extend damage windows. Say that you know you can only land a certain amount of hits before the enemy counterattacks and probably kills you if you overextend. Well, if you have this effect, then you can keep attacking and then restage on reaction to avoid the counter hit from the enemy, both resulting in you restaging just as much, if not more damage than you would have without the effect, as well as cheating death. It is simply going to find its way onto every single optimized build. Next up is defeating enemies during ultimate increasing attack power. With just a little bit of map knowledge, this becomes the single most broken effect for day 1 and 2. For every defeated enemy during your ultimate, you get a 15% damage bonus for 30 seconds. This should already sound very powerful, but it's even stronger than it initially seems. Just like most buffs in Elden Ring, each individual stack is counted multiplicatively. So if you kill 5 enemies, you're not looking at 75% more damage, you have just slightly gone over doubling it instead. Simply put, the more enemies you manage to kill during the window, the more exponential every additional buff gets. Secondly is that it doesn't need to be Duchess specifically that kills something to give her the buff. If you're coordinating with a team, you can have, and don't you ever die, them also killing enemies. That way you get so much damage that you can smite enemies before they even knew what hit them. Honestly, when you know how it works, this effect feels like you're cheating, and it will find its way onto almost every single meta build. Improving restage's damage is not a game changer like the last 2 effects, but it is still very desirable. Because it counts as a character-specific effect, it's not vying for an attack power buff, which relics can only have one of. And restage is the primary way in which Duchess separates herself from the rest of the cast when it comes to damage. As such, increasing the damage from 50% to 60% is a very nice buff for builds that plan on doing a lot of burst damage. A very similar thing can be said for decreasing character skill cooldown time. For some of these builds, there isn't really a good third effect for the various surface relics, in which case, decreasing restage's cooldown is oftentimes the best option. Lastly, let's talk about Hoarfrost Stomp, which feels almost necessary. Despite all of her potential, Duchess has a very difficult time getting the day 1 ball rolling, mainly because, outside of a crit stack build, her dagger is pretty bad. Hoarfrost Stomp is not only a good Ash of War that scales on both of Duchess's highest damage output stats, but also because it fixes so many problems that she has on day 1, giving her range, AoE damage, Frostbite, which is burst damage you can restage, and most importantly, good hit stun, which the dagger or wind chain lacks a lot of the time. There are some builds where other Ashes of War make more sense, but generally across the board, Hoarfrost Stomp finds itself being the most beneficial. Lastly, consider putting on the Night Invader buff if you're going to be playing with teammates that are also going to run it too. Unlike Everjails, the Night Invader buff gets better and better the deeper depth you get to. Cataclysms become pretty much guaranteed, and both the rune acquisition as well as the powerful items you can use immediately are worth it. However, if you're doing solos, I do not recommend these areas at all. The primary way to counteract the extreme damage of the Condemned is to gank them, which obviously you cannot do in solo play generally. Be warned though, anytime you want to put the Night Invader buff on a build, you do have to give up one of the other attacking bonuses of one of your surface relics, so it is a give and take. It has the potential to add a ton more damage, but it is completely reliant on your routing. These are the givens, and they will show up on almost every single optimized build. Now, we have finally made it to the meta builds, so why don't we start off with not just the best Duchess build, but maybe the best build in the entire game. Carrion, Magic Stack, Duchess. If you're familiar with base Elden Ring at all, then you know that Carrion Slicer is one of the most broken spells From Software has ever put in one of their games. And rather than toning it down for Nightreign, they gave it the keys to the kingdom. First off is Duchess herself. Her sorcery damage is a little bit lower than Recluse, but it's more than made up for every few seconds by the burst damage that Restage allows for. But the main reason is her dodge. You see, Carrion Slicer is one of those few spells that actually has a moveset. Running, jumping, and most importantly, dodge attacking, all have their own unique animations that bypass the need for spellcasting speed increases. And would you know it, Duchess has by far the best dodge of all the Nightfarers. So, what you're essentially looking at is a sorcery that resembles a dagger, dealing the damage of a colossal sword that has a unique animation for dodges, and a character that was specifically made to use sorceries, daggers, and dodge really well. Needless to say, it feels as though Duchess was specifically made to break Carrion Slicer as hard as humanly possible. But that is only half the story of why Slicer is so crazy in Nightreign. Now, the other part of the reason is tied to the internal language the game uses to generate relics themselves. As stated previously, you can only have one effect from the attack power table roll on a single relic. You'll never come across 3 instances of physical attack up on a relic, for example. But there's a couple other categories that can increase damage in other ways. The most important of these different exceptions is the sorceries and incantations list. Any one of these single effects is going to increase the damage of that specific school of magic by 12%, and would you know it, Carrion Sorcery is on that list. So, what would the optimal build look like? First off, we're going to have 6 instances of Carrion Sorcery, and then either 5 or 6 instances of Magic Attack Up, based on if you're running Night Invaders or not. Assuming you're running all 6, you are looking at just shy of an earth-shattering 335% damage increase to Carrion Slicer. But now we need to figure out the last 6 effects, which I think go as follow. Defeating enemies during ultimate increases attack power, as well as defeating enemies giving back ultimate art gauge. Improved restage attack power, as well as iframes on restage. Frost Stomp, which, other than all the great things we talked about previously, also does magic damage, so it's getting a buff from half of our attack bonuses. And lastly, Dormant Staves, to drastically increase your chances of finding Slicer. Needless to say, this build is whether you somehow make it legitimately, or you cheat it into existence, I can guarantee you will never have fun again. Rather than enemies being a challenge to interact with, they're simply going to be dominoes that you need to flick over, and the mildest inconvenience will anger you greatly. Really, the only downside of this build is that it's bordering on impossible to make normally, which is perhaps simply too strong for its own good. But let's strip everything away. What is the bare minimum needed to get this build off the ground? Simply put, a lot of magic attack up. Perhaps it's a bit anticlimactic, but just having magic attack up on everything is still a top 2 build for Duchess. Obviously, I hyper-focused on Carrion Slicer because it really is in a league of its own. But the majority of sorceries deal magic damage, and beyond that, the majority of spells are either good to amazing. By proxy, any of the other sorcery schools of magic that deal magic damage are a good option if you get them on a Magic 2 or Magic 4 relic. But past sorceries, plenty of the best weapons in the game do magic damage. Weapons that Duchess is very astute at being able to abuse to the maximum. Now, as you can probably guess, the first upgrade that you're hoping for is a relic that has both Magic 4 as well as the restage iframes on it. but a very underrated effect is starting armament dealing magic damage, specifically with the lack of an Ash of War. Not only does the magic side of the split scaling get a damage buff, but the magic dagger, the base Ash of War, also gives additional magic damage when you're running a whole bunch of magic up. This is phenomenal, especially if you're running dormant staves. Not only does it make your starting dagger do a lot of damage, but if you find a good spell, then the best thing for your main weapon to have is a self buff. That way you're not trying to use your Ash of War all the time, just when it wears off. In conclusion, even in its most base form, Magic Stack is phenomenal for Duchess, allowing you to pivot between magic weapons and spells on a dime, and doing phenomenal damage in the process. If there was one build that I would recommend you try to put together as quickly as you can, I would say let it be Magic Stack. If there's one thing that From Software is really good at, it's over-centralizing the meta of their games with the release of the DLC. And unfortunately, Nightreign did not escape this fate. With the release of the new worst ever Dark bosses in the game, also came the most brain-dead meta imaginable. Double Balancers, or Skill Spam for short, is literally just L2 to ring all over again. There are plenty of Nightfarers that appreciated this setup, and per usual, Duchess is not the most damaging of them, but still, she is one of the penultimate skill spam characters in the game. A large mana bar, restage for burst damage, and the various effects of Finale make her one of the easiest characters to get away with this extremely simple playstyle. Seriously, the amount of Duchess players you'll come across in trios that have no clue how to dodge anything, but still get by just because they're running this setup is astounding. Skill spam hit Duchess players like a drug addiction, and it's truly sad watching what is supposed to be the coolest and most stylish character in the game get reduced to just an L2 stick. I hate double balancers, and it pains me that this game has befallen the same fate as base Elden Ring. Damn it, FromSoft. How could you have done this to another one of your games? Why do you insist on making a single button the best option at all times? You added all these extra moves, all these different options, but everything always boils back down to the same answer. For the love of God, I hope that Duskbloods and whatever games they make next do not get the same treatment that Elden Ring and Nightreign has. Well, I guess with my little rant out of the way, I should actually describe how to make the build, shouldn't I? The reason that everybody runs this build is not just because it's really strong, but as stated previously, half of the relics are pretty much guaranteed from the get-go. Really, the only one you're looking to replace is the Golden Dew, if you get a good Night Invader relic. The reason this is because if you're running double balancers on Duchess, I'm assuming you're running trios. Don't get me wrong, skill spam can do a lot of damage in solo, but there's just so many Ashes of War that are really slow, that are just begging for you to get one shot. Issues like this get fixed when you have teammates that are taking aggro, as well as more chances for good Ashes of War, due to there being more people getting loot. So anyways, if you're running in trios, Night Invaders is definitely the best buff you can go for. The single best third relic you could get is defeating enemies upping attack power during ultimate, Night Invaders, and Hoarfrost Stomp. However, there starts being a lot more diversity when talking about the deep relics. Unlike the other builds, I don't have a singular most viable option to show you. Really, you're trying to have many iterations of this build, and choosing the right one for the Night Lord based on what you see. The attack type you're looking for, dormant power, and stat skew are all dependent on what you're trying to find. For example, in this video here, Clinky Mocha showed off a couple of different Duchess builds. This one here, looking for the Godslayer Greatsword, is looking for things like Fire Attack Power Up, Faith Skew, and Strength Skew if you're fine with your mana bar being a lot smaller. Or this one here, looking for Flails, is built around going for Magic Attack Up, and Strength Skew if, once again, you're fine with your mana bar being a lot smaller, but I don't think I'd recommend this. Some other notable examples go go as follows. If you're looking for Halo swap, then you would want Holy Damage up and the Faith skew. If you're wanting to go for the katanas, then you should probably go with Affinity Attack up, since all three of these have different elemental damages on their skill. Or you could even go for Physical Attack up if you're looking for something specific like the Health and Steeple under HDS or Bloodhound Fang under Curved Greatswords. Not saying all of these are equally good options, but just mere examples, of course. Now, as you probably could have guessed, the different physical and elemental damages are not all created equal. Some are definitely more valuable for Duchess than others, so why don't we rank them real quick with a tier list? Coming in last place is going to be lightning damage. While the two legendary weapons that do lightning damage are premier options for a skill spam build, especially considering the Cragblade's jump attack counts as skill damage, once you look below them, you start noticing a problem. There are very few lightning Ashes of War available, and these aren't particularly great options for Duchess either. They're not bad Ashes of War, and there's some funny stuff you can do with lightning ram involving low profiling attacks, but these animations being as slow as they are just begging to get one shot. And I don't know about you, but in my experience, lightning points of interest tend to be some of the most rare that will spawn. I hardly ever see these on my runs. And it doesn't help that all of the Night Lords weak to lightning damage are not that hard in the first place. Personally, I don't know if I would bother with this one. I think I'd recommend just running Affinity Attack Power. Lightning will go in C tier. Starting off B tier is going to be physical damage, which is suffering from perhaps the opposite problems of lightning. There are plenty of Ashes of War that can or do physical damage, but there's a few roadblocks in our way. First being that if you do get one of these Ashes of War, what if the weapon is split scaling? Well, then you're only doing part of the additional damage that you would be hoping to do. As stated previously, there is some funny stuff you can do specifically trying to find things like health and steam, but otherwise I think I would leave this one alone too. B tier. All of the elements from here on are definitely worth trying to make builds around because they're all really good. First up in B tier is going to be fire damage. There are a ton of good fire Ashes of War, and plenty of the Night Lords and field bosses are going to be either neutral or weak to fire damage. Not to mention that a lot of the fire points of interest are really easy to clear. Really the only thing that sometimes holds you back is when you get an end of day boss in the lake, which will give them a fire defense bonus. This isn't the end of the world, but if I were to have this happen and see that the boss is something like Godskin Duo or Dancing Lion, I think I'd be pretty mad. A tier. Next up is Affinity Attack Power. This one's really simple. It's not as large of a damage bonus as a specific elemental or physical buff, but it's going to all but guarantee that you get some value on your run. Sometimes you just don't get anything that would be helpful for the night boss, and you just have to settle with what you got. In situations like this, you'll be happy that you built around versatility. However, it is worth mentioning that the little 6% that you wouldn't think much of does go a long way in killing things faster, which does mean more loot, more runes, etc. Affinity Attack Power is a jack of all trades, master of none. So whether you just doubt you'll get a good run when it comes to your luck, or you can't see what the Night Lord is going to be, I recommend going for Affinity Attack Power. The last two for S tier both have an argument for being the best. In my opinion, in second place is going to be Holy Attack Power. There are quite a few good Ashes of War that deal holy damage, but let's be honest, you're just looking for Halo swap. Its damage and ease of use is quite literally criminal, and it is quite easy to see why everybody knows and uses this setup. But if you don't manage to find it on a run, then you're looking at a significantly diminished build. On the other hand, Magic Attack Up is perfect for Duchess. Plenty of the best Ashes of War in the game deal magic damage, and plenty of these Duchess is really good at using it. But what separates it for me from holy damage is the ability to pivot into sorceries if you come across something really good. Obviously the damage won't be as high as if you were just running pure magic stack, but it's definitely better than nothing. And the likelihood of finding a good sorcery is much higher than finding a holy spell in the first place. Like I said, I could see someone switching these two, but they're both peak options, and I recommend you trying to build both. To conclude, I absolutely love double balancers, and I love the fight, and I love the relic setup, and I am just in absolute love with everything about this. From Software, please make more stuff like this in the future. Now, let's specifically talk about some relic setups that are meta in solo play, the first of which being critical hit stack. Before we can talk about all of its advantages, why doesn't it work very well when you're playing with teammates? Well, there's two pretty simple reasons. The first being your teammates taking the critical hits. If you're playing with randoms, just forget about it. You are not getting the critical hits, almost guaranteed. And if you're communicating with people, say on Discord, it can be alright. They can let you go for your critical hits, but oftentimes people will get vacuumed into critical hits they didn't mean to take. And if you're not doing it, then your build is kind of doing nothing. However, in trios, you're pretty good at clearing the mid-castle and points of interest, though, against enemies that are backstabbable. More on that later. The second reason being that most of the time the juice just isn't worth the squeeze. Bosses are a lot harder to voice break in trios, and when you do finally get it, and you do take the critical hit, because of the inflated health numbers, it's just not as much damage. If you've set up a team composition where one is a crit stack, and then the other ones are really good at doing damage while the enemy is in the critical hit, then once again, it's alright, but it's nothing special. Oftentimes, you're much better off just going for skill spam or magic stack. However, none of these are issues in solo play, where this build really comes into its own. Let me show you something interesting. That was a depth 3. Or how about this one here? That was a depth 5. As you can see, even with the starting dagger, the damage is outrageous. In solo, a crit build has so many advantages that it feels like a cheat code. The first being the absolute consistency of its game plan. Daggers innately do the most critical hit damage, and Duchess's starting dagger has one of the highest critical hit ratios in the game, being tied for second place. As such, even though it isn't the best, oftentimes you can just purple the starting dagger and go to town on everything. Because of this simplicity, what you're looking for on the run is also really simple. Critical hit bonuses for one, charged attack bonuses, because they will be your main form of damage while trying to land the critical hit, and a whole bunch of defensive bonuses to make sure that you can live better. And even if it doesn't do great damage, just finding a weapon that has really good stagger potential is pretty much all you need other than your starting dagger. Not to mention that a crit stack build is a hard counter to some of the worst fights in the game. As long as you find a decent parry tool, you can trivialize balancers and Everdark balancers unlike any other build. Or, if you're playing against Everdark Libra, you can almost always one-shot the Condemned before they even get to do anything to you. It's not particularly amazing against bosses that move around a whole bunch, because there's a better chance that they'll start regenerating their poise, but it's not bad against these enemies. It still hits like a truck once you do get your crit. Now, the rest of the advantages and the information will make more sense if we go ahead and start looking at the most optimized build possible. The Everdark Odell relic is a given because of how much crit damage is on it. And because the Collector Signboard relic is so close to being completely perfect for this build, we will also want it too on the build. But this kind of forces us into the only goblet that'll work, Double Red Green. The best third slot goes as follows: restage damage increase, critical hit, skill cooldown. Skill cooldown is going to be generally useful on most builds, but it is especially powerful on a crit stack build. It's not just restaging damage, it's also adding back some of that poise damage that you did to the enemy during the time window. This is the main reason that Duchess can still poise break in.
Well, I keep on getting touched by fucking divers, bro. Yeah, bro, I got molested by fucking Magic for the entire game, so I switched to fucking Ultron. I mean, they do it right, yeah, they try to spin, you know? I can't aim for shit, bro. Every time like a diver's on me, I just panic and
literally has the thing that like
attack combination. Restage.
You ever add it? You can play some.
I'm not that good, bro. Every time I see a dive, I just switch to Ultron and play for the best, bro.
That's wild.
I mean, it worked that game, bro. The other healer got touched, though.
Shaving off only a couple of seconds from restage. Every single
I don't know what to do about fucking divers.
And by proxy,
There's one game, like the second game I got on, fucking Spider-Man and Black Panther, bro. Holy shit, bro. Just getting touched.
Why would we want
How do you, like, not die to a fucking diver? Like,
use the sea level ability when you get dove.
What gives? I used to think it was useless too.
Bro, I just switched to Ultra, bro. I just fly up in the air so they can't hit me, bro.
Essentially, what it does is it applies Assassin's Gambit to yourself upon a backstab.
Ultron is so fun, bro.
Enemies have to be
But he kinda sucks, I'm not even gonna lie.
But much more
He has like no healing. You need like try to run like 3 healers or
or don't play healers.
mid-castle layout. If
Heals is not fun.
you can kill
Bro, how do you not get touched by divers the entire time, bro? Like,
resistance, and because of the
Just
silence
don't play heals. Just like and snowflake yourself, bro. And still the tank, so heal really good. Snowflake yourself.
especially in
yo, no one wants to peel, bro. Give me this horn, give me this horn.
True feud.
Bro, dying is boring, bro. You're gonna die without a healer, bro.
mitigates that problem almost entirely.
Like, only
And if you do have
like,
this makes it to where almost every enemy that was aggroed at you will start.
I swear to God, no one wants to peel for the life of us.
Easy.
The entire game, I was just getting touched.
Necessary.
I was being spawn camped by the Black Panther and the Spider-Man, bro. Like,
Does so much damage. This makes it so much more manageable to go through these various areas with enemies. And I can already hear some people thinking that.
and I can't believe people don't know why they're losing, bro.
On night 3, the single best supercharging effect in the whole game. So I would say that's not that big of a deal. Speaking of which, you've probably noticed.
We started winning when I switched to Ultron.
Why is that?
Because no heals. Heals is better than no heals.
Yeah.
Each stack lasts 30 seconds, and if you
We never lost because
stagger the enemy,
I don't know why our team got staggered, bro.
kill. And if it's an enemy that you have a harder time staggering, you might just run out of your buff.
Bro, no one wants to peel, bro. Like, getting touched to the back, bro. How do the healers even play the game without getting tilted?
More consistent.
Oh, just
in
play
the
it up.
situation of a crit build, I'd argue it makes it less consistent. You really don't need it. The crit damage is so high.
I mean, I guess it is quick play. People aren't playing that seriously quick play, bro. I can't play competitive yet because I just realized downloaded the game and it's like, you have to download the shaders first.
This is the
How about me?
that I'd argue having a bunch of extra health is actually meta. Which we have on every single one of these. There's not really an amazing additional damage effect that makes sense for the build. What does make a lot of sense is having a lot more survivability. The reasoning goes as follows. If you've done poise damage to an enemy, but then you die before getting the stagger, their poise health is going to regenerate all the way back to full before you have the chance to hit them again, because you're in the middle of respawning. If any of these builds desperately needs to not go down, it's a crit build, and the extra survivability is extremely appreciated. For this reason and more, the strength skew is amazing on this build. Not only does it innately add 60 more health, allowing us to survive even better, the extra strength is going to be extremely helpful for various stagger and crit weapons. Weapons like colossal swords, hammers, fists, heavy thrusting swords, etc. all have a very considerable amount of strength scaling, which will allow us to do a lot more damage, assuming we have this effect. But not only that, the weapons that have a crit bonus on them, these legendary ones here, are going to have a very significant amount of their scaling tied to strength as well. It's the most practical way of raising both our health and damage in one relic effect, while also not vying for a damage or health slot of a different effect. And per usual, restage invincibilities here as well. As you can probably guess, the starter build will use both of the guaranteed relics as well as crit on everything. The first upgrade that you're hoping for is restage invincibility, per usual, and then from there, hopefully you get some extra health increasing effects. Very simple in this front, I won't lie. Something I almost forgot to mention is that, of all builds, a crit build is the absolute best for punching above its weight. I have done so many runs in Depth 5 where, upon touching down, I fight something like a Bell-Bearing Hunter, Deathrite Bird, Blackblade Kindred, whatever the case might be, just because I can kill the enemy within like 4 to 6 critical hits. To conclude, a crit build is for people that want to actually be rewarded for understanding the game's mechanics, understanding bosses' movesets, and knowing when you can go for high punish opportunities. If you want an extremely powerful build that actually rewards you for knowing things and feels really good as a result of it, I recommend a crit stack build more than any other. I have one more build I would like to share with you today. One more that I consider to be a contender for the meta. However, it might shock you what it is. Initial Standard Attack, or ISA, is perhaps the most underrated build that Duchess can make use of. It's most commonly thought of as a Raider or an Iron Eye build, but let me show you something interesting. In this test here, both Duchess and Raider are using 6 instances of ISA. They're both using their starting weapon at level 15, and the test will conclude when they reach 2,000 damage. That was a lot closer than you were expecting, wasn't it? The more I experiment in this game, the more I appreciate how diverse Duchess's dagger moveset is. And with this archetype, Duchess's two-handed moveset finally has a niche. That being the block cancel on the first R1 is so fast, it's bordering on immediate. There's 3 core principles to why this is so strong. The first being that a single instance of ISA is 15% extra damage to the first R1 or L1. If you have 6 of these, you're looking at over 230 extra damage to your first R1. Secondly, being how fast the first R1 is. Part of the reason why Slicer is so good isn't just its high damage, but also how fast the animation is, allowing you to sneak in damage where other weapons might struggle. While ISA doesn't have as high of a ceiling as Slicer, it's oftentimes much more consistent because you start with a dagger. And because of how quick it is, you can sneak in ISA hits all the time. The third being how often it allows you to punch above your own weight. Similar to a crit build, the extra damage allows you to take on formidable enemies right as you touch down with a lot of consistency. More than doubling your damage while also being able to dodge pretty much everything is a godsend. And if all of that wasn't enough, you are by no means limited to a dagger. Plenty of the best weapons for Duchess to use are also phenomenal with an ISA build. Thrusting swords, claws, fists, power stance straight swords, and especially the ornamental straight sword to be specific, power stance spears, power stance curved swords, scimitar, shamshir, etc. All of these are perfect options for this build because of good block cancel windows. But it begs the question, what would an optimal ISA build look like? Hold on to your socks because I can guarantee it's a lot crazier than you're gonna expect. Let's get some of the obvious ones out of the way. Every relic will have an instance of ISA on it, of course. We'll have 3 instances of skill cooldown reduction. We'll have restage iframes as well as defeating enemies upping attack power. But from here is where it gets a bit special. Dormant thrusting swords specifically, as well as every instance of improved attack power against frostbitten and scarlet rotted enemies. Similar to incantations and sorceries being their own classification, these two also fall into their own category, and not only can you get them on the same relic that has an attack power roll, but they can have multiple within the same classification on the same relic. And if we're talking about just the moveset and its synergy with a character, actually, thrusting swords are the best weapon class for Duchess, not daggers. They don't require ISA to be good, but they work flawlessly on this build for various reasons. Whether you're two-handing for that perfect block cancel window being the speed of lightning, or being able to alternate between R1 and L1 with power stance, you're looking at tremendous damage either way. It's often thought of as a bad thing that thrusting swords don't have a legendary weapon, and both of the purples don't have a unique Ash of War. But for the case of this build, it works out perfectly. One has Frostbite, the other one has Scarlet Rot, and if you have dormant thrusting swords, it's almost guaranteed that you will come across one, if not both, every single run. So let's say that you have this relic set up, and you have both the Frozen Needle and the Anspur Rapier. You get both Frostbite and Scarlet Rot on the enemy. In this case, you are looking at an unthinkable 560% increased damage to your ISA hits, and that's before factoring in the defense shred from Frostbite. If there was a build that could overthrow Carrion Magic Stack as the king, I think it would be this one. Perhaps its damage can't get quite as high, I mean you're going to be slaughtering everything regardless, but its game plan is even easier to get going in comparison to Carrion Magic Stack. There's quite a few different staves and spells that you could get that are not exactly what you're looking for. It's almost guaranteed that you'll get the purple thrusting swords on the run, and even before you do, every other thrusting sword is so good at its job that it doesn't even matter in the meantime. You're still going to be doing plenty of damage at lightning speeds, and unlike a magic stack or a skilled spam build, the ISA build gives you immediate value. As we went over previously, daggers are perfect for this setup, so the starting dagger is getting a significantly larger boost than if you started with a magic infusion. But let's strip everything back. What is the bare minimum, and what are the few little bits that you want to see as an upgrade first? As you could have guessed, 6 instances of ISA is the first milestone that you're trying to reach. But some of the first upgrades are actually going to be very different than what we just went over. The single best relic effect you can upgrade the build with is the Duchess Strength Skew. While daggers and thrusting swords don't get that much of a damage bonus, almost every other good ISA weapon has a pretty good amount of strength scaling. This goes for plenty of weapons like straight swords, spears, curved swords, but the most important of all of them is going to be fists, allowing you to do a lot more damage with strike weapons, allowing you to very easily counter things like Deathray Birds and Black Blade cantrips. Additionally, this is one of the only builds that does not care at all about having the mana bar reduced by so much. Really, the only Ash of War that you're trying to use is one that puts a buff on your weapon. 2 other really good upgrades are going to be Stamina on hit and Ghost Damage regenerating health. One helps significantly with stamina management, and the other one is extremely useful if you have both a damage negation and full HP effect, as well as successive attacks negating damage. You're going to be looking for this defensive combo every single run with this build, and getting your health back by hitting the enemy is going to be the best way of getting back to a defensively safe position without using your Crimson Tears. Also, another great option is any of the starting Ashes of War that give your weapon a damage buff. Duchess's dagger has one by default, but something like Sacred Blade, Flaming Strike, etc. are great options as well. However, despite all of its strengths, I have it here for the solo play section. Why is that? What makes builds like Magic Stack and Skill Spam so good in teams is going to be how high the damage ceiling is. Your teammates can help you get the loot and damage buffs that you're looking for. So even though the health bars are much larger, your damage will still be very good if you had some decent RNG. On the contrary, what makes an ISA build so great on Duchess is not going to be a damage ceiling. It's going to be consistency, non-committal damage, and how high it raises the damage floor. Don't get me wrong, of course. This is not saying that you cannot find any success at all within trios, but the strengths of the build are definitely more well accustomed to solo play. I can hear some people perhaps saying that they don't want to play an R1L1 simulator, which I can understand. I also don't like having to press more than one button. Have as many options is twice as good, of course. To conclude, I'm willing to bet that ISA is a lot better for Duchess than you had previously thought about. While it's not a direct testament to a build's strength, of all builds, the one I use the most when I'm doing solo runs is without a shadow of a doubt an ISA build. Its consistency is just too much to pass up on. It doesn't care about the weapon class or what type of damage you're doing. If it's a weapon, it can benefit from the build. The last thing I'd like to do today before we depart is going to be to show you some of my personal builds under these different archetypes. Perhaps you will be envious of what I have, or maybe you have something even better. So why don't we have a little bit of fun and take a look at them. Alrighty, here we are in game, and it is time to go over some of these various builds that we have here. Now, not everything I have here is part of the meta discussion, but as you can probably tell, I make a lot of variations of the ones that are meta, because these have slight quirks to them that make them better for certain scenarios. So we'll go in order that I covered them in the video. We'll start with Magic Stack. So, as you can see here, this one is going to be all around just the most generalist in terms of making sure that every single magic up is maxed out. These front relics are pretty good. I have 2 instances of skill cooldown, as well as some various mana increases, whether that be from the Sorcerer's Rise or just a little bit of a stat affecting one. Critical hits fill more of the art gauge. That's just kind of whatever. It's nice, I guess, but nothing crazy. I won't lie. If you look at that red top relic, that is the best relic I've ever gotten. That looks cheated. I think I literally yelled when I got that. I could not believe what I had just gotten. So as you can imagine, it's on a couple of these other Magic Stack builds. And the one at the bottom I love a lot. It's super simple. Reduced damage negation is not a big deal. You shouldn't be healing when you could get hit anyway. Sometimes there's a lot of enemies, but even still, you know, making sure you're in a safe position to heal is not that hard. But having the restage iframes in Magic 4 with a trivial downside is really good. I'm just thankful for these, the red and the yellow relic not having something like reduced rune acquisition or continuous HP loss, something really bad like that. The middle one's not amazing. It's alright. But having both Rot and Poison build up below max HP kind of stinks. I would really like to replace that with something, but I don't have another Magic 4 that doesn't have a really, really bad downside. So I'm kind of just waiting on something that doesn't suck for that slot. This next one is a bit unfortunate because it is good, but I couldn't make it exactly how I wanted to right now. I finally got that top green relic. I finally got one that has magic up 2 and defeating enemies upping attack power. Fantastic. Fantastic combination of effects. I love that. Also that middle one, the int +3, a nice little way to squeeze out a little bit more damage, a little bit of vigor too. And I especially love that bottom relic. It's just the tiniest bit off of being as much magic attack up as possible, but it is +1. It's a 1% damage loss, but that's okay. Starting armament deals magic damage and helps the starting dagger be a lot better. You do have that magic Azure 4 self-buff, and that also gets a bonus from all of these magic ups, and so it is really nice. That top relic is, and it is a hair away from being perfect. I can't believe how good it is, but if that was just Magic 4 instead of improved sorceries, it would literally be perfect. Improved
that's a fucking god relic.
To any weapon or has more damage, but it can increase the damage of, say, like the magma spells a little bit better, but that's obviously not an interest of this build. It is still going to be very helpful for when we do find the spells that we're looking for, though. Getting that with dormant staves and iframes is just unbelievable. And then the rest are just the best Magic 4s I could get my hands on that don't have too bad of downsides. This one here is going to be kind of a combination of the last two, both maxing out how high of Magic 4s I can get, while also having that starting magic damage weapon. This one's more generalist. I do have a bit more damage on weapons, since one of that improved sorcery is instead Magic 4 on everything. Also, I better not get hit while healing on this build. All three of my downsides are reduced damage negation for flask usages. Like I said, this hardly ever comes up, but like, if I get hit by like a paper cut while healing, I'm dead. So I do have to keep that in mind for this build. And then the last of the variations for Magic Stack is going to be this one. Once again, a combination of what we've seen before, but this is where things are going to get crazy. So essentially combining all of my best relics for this last slot here. Dormant Staves, the only two magic, carry, and sorcery relics I've ever gotten. I've played this game for like well over 1,000 hours, and it's only been in like my last 50 hours of gameplay that I got 2 of these, and one of them is like the best thing of all time. Truly crazy, very blessed, I won't lie. And yeah, I would really like it if one of these yellow relics resembled that bottom green one right there, with the starting magic damage. That would be really nice if I could fit both of those effects onto this build.
Okay.
Alright, so you might be wondering, for a build I despise, why are there so many different Ash of Warspan builds? Well, these are for when I'm playing trios, and essentially I have a variation for every situation that makes sense. So I have a few different affinity attack power ones, and the point of these goes as follows. The first one here is just going to be affinity attack power. It does have a problem with dormant dormant medium shields, which is not preferable, but the downsides aren't quite as bad as this one here. No, actually this one's better. I should just delete this one. Hold on now. Let's just get rid of that one. This one's quite literally the same thing, but less bad, so that's good. I have a Caligo version, like I mentioned in the video. This is for comfort playing. And then for every variation, whether it be magic, or fire, or holy, I have a Golden Dew version. If I'm playing with teammates and I say, hey, are we running Night Invaders? If they say no, I run Golden Dew. If they say yes, then I run this one here. This is... That middle relic looks really good, and don't get me wrong, I'm happy with it, but the Dagger Reprise just really is... It's kind of the worst Duchess effect that I could have gotten for this, because if one of your teammates is taking a critical hit, which is the best time to do the Dagger Reprise on an enemy, is a teammate is taking a critical hit and you get the full combo completely for free. But the thing is you should be spamming your Ash of War, so that really only comes up if you completely run out of mana. But it's not terrible. I actually have this ridiculous relic I got within like the last 2 hours of gameplay that is unbelievable. But the problem is it's red. If this was blue or yellow, this would be perfect. This would be perfect if it just was not red. Duchess doesn't have the right goblet combination to run double balancers and this with it being on red. So that hurts. That doesn't feel good. But so you get an idea of what some of these different deep relics look like. Affinity is simply going to be affinity +2 on everything, right? For magic, it's going to be magic 4. Thankfully, I have the iframe magic 4 relic. I also have one for fire +4 in iframes, which is awesome. I really like this one for if I'm going to get, say, any of the Fire Week bosses or anything like that. There's a lot of really good Fire Ashes of War, so very happy with this one. And this one's honestly... My holy build is really close to being really good. Honestly, that strength skew probably isn't the best thing of all time. But what's crazy is I do have one that is holy, but I think it's on green that has holy up. Yeah, it's it's on green that I have holy up +3. So I think I made a third holy right here, if I remember right. Yeah, so I made this one. I also just so happen to have a Dormant Seals holy +4. Honestly, that's kind of a non-combo with this build. But I think that's literally the only other holy 4 I have to work with right now. So not the worst thing ever. If I were to get Discus of Light, it would still do pretty good damage, all things considered. Up next, I have my 2 variations for the critical hit build. So these are identical other than that green relic you see right there. So that is the one you can get from the Collector's Signboard. And then I just so happen to get this one here. I did explain earlier on that defeating enemies is actually kind of a non-combo with a crit build, but I still wanted to have this alternate version for testing things out. And I will say, based on my personal testing, I prefer this one significantly more, but I'm going to keep it. Unfortunately, I really haven't gotten the world's best deep relics for a crit build. Dormant Colossal Swords, that is nice, because they do have a really good rolling poke attack that synergizes perfectly with Duchess's dodge, right? And it is really nice for that reason. But I don't have a straight skew relic with improved crit. That would add so much damage to those Colossal Swords. It's not the end of the world, because the point of a crit build is to use a dagger to do most of your damage with the crit. But I do really wish I had that. The real killer here, though, is on that middle relic, the reduced damage negation after evading. Improved physical damage negation is really nice. I'm really happy to have that. But, man, that defense drop on every dodge stings. It's not as bad as repeated evasions by any means, but honestly, it's not even quite so much about how bad it is to lower your damage after evading. It has more to do with just how annoying the sound is. Hearing that like 500 times on a single run, that like psh attack, not attack, sound, is not nice at all. I don't like that very much. That green relic though, I am happy with that. Iframes plus improved crit, very nice. If you get a good attack bonus, the restage iframes, and it doesn't have a debilitating downside, it's probably an absolute banger of a relic, and you should keep it. So, you know, moral of the story, I reckon. Now, I will quickly go over the health stack build. Once again, the amount of health that this gives you is truly crazy. I finally got a triple stack. I, for the longest time, could not afford to triple up on max HP like this. And then I finally did get restage iframes, increased max HP. So Duchess normally has 860 health without anything affecting her HP. Watch this. Let's go to the sparring grounds real quick. Look at that health bar. Sheesh. 1517. Sheesh. Almost doubling the amount of health we have. Yeah, I have done runs in Deep 5 where I survived like 2 attacks from Everdark Gladius. Just surviving a single hit from Gladius is crazy. Much less more than 1. So, really good. I like this build a lot. This is the, like, I want a comfy run / I need to practice against a specific enemy build, and I like it a lot. One of my favorite, I don't think you would say meta build by any means. It is a meta contender if you have just started an account and you just have guaranteed relics to work with. I think this is a meta contender, that is why I put it in the video. But this is the meta for either comfort runs or practicing once you have gotten some of these other builds made. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to go over maybe my most ridiculous build in terms of quality. My ISA build is truly crazy. Alright, so the front half of the rounds, insane. I've had that middle yellow relic since, like, I started the account. It was one of the first relics I ever got. And for the longest time, I didn't even care about it having ISA on it. I just kept it because it was my only relic that had the defeating enemies effect with skill cooldown. But once I realized how good ISA is on Duchess, I realized how much of a lucky person I was for getting that. That is an unbelievable relic, right? And, you know, these are not maxed out, they're not all +3, but this is very close to having the cooldown as short as possible, which is really nice. These deep relics are unbelievable. Especially these first two. Dormant Thrusting Swords, ISA. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. My jaw hit my desk when I got this. And this one, man. Look, it took away 60 vigor. That sucks early game. I had been hunting for a strength skew ISA relic for legitimately like 200 hours of gameplay. I had been hunting and hunting. And one day I finally got it. And I'll be honest with you, I wish that holy damage negation just wasn't there. That way it didn't have a downside. I wish it was just a blue relic. Blue and rarity, obviously, it's a blue color relic. But other than that, like, that's not that bad of a downside. That's still no continuous HP loss or something. But I jumped for joy when I got that, legitimately. But when it comes to the last relic, this is where there stands to be some optimization. If I can somehow, someway get restage iframes, ISA on a yellow relic, this will be the best build of all time. I seriously, like, just demolish everything in D5 with this build already. If I just had that ability to artificially increase the length of my combos, just because I have that effect, it would truly be over. But, I won't lie, these two yellow ones I have are still really nice. Partial HP restoration on post-damage attacks. it's not a necessity, but it is really nice because if you get sand, which is successive attacks negate damage, and DNAF, which is damage negation at full. If you get both of those, which is what you're looking for, you only took a little bit of damage when you got hit, probably. And, Duchess is not trying to trade with enemies to get health back like Raider, but when you do have those buffs, you would really like to not spend your Crimson Tears. So in situations like that, it is actually a really nice effect. If I were to get some ISA relics that had a bunch of extra health on them, then this max HP one over here would be really nice. It's 5% for every Great Church. That would be significantly more beneficial of an effect if I had, say, in these slots it was ISA Vigor, etc. So, maybe there's a future where I do put this one to use, but not as of current. Not as of current, I tell you. But yeah, without going over the builds that are kind of just goofy, off-meta, whatever, just keeping it concise to the video, that is what I have as of current. Let me know if you have things that are even better than what I have. I would say that a lot of my builds are pretty blessed. I definitely have gotten some really good RNG on these, and it feels good. It feels good using almost every build I have, except double balancers, because pressing one button will never feel good. But otherwise, they all feel pretty good. So, I think that's a good place to call it quits, don't you think? One last word before we go. If you have watched to this point in the video, thank you very much. While I'm not going to act like this video is some high art or anything, it has been the hardest I've ever worked on a video, and I've been working on it for many months now. I've been stressing about what video to make to return to YouTube with. I've had a pretty tough last few months, whether it be literal things happening or just struggling with being a happy person. So I've been nervous about this video for a while, and if it would really stick the landing. Hopefully it was worth the wait. I do apologize that I've been gone for so long, but hopefully I can rectify that by making things of similar quality here in the future, and hopefully they will not take me as long. Perhaps life will stop getting in the way as much, and perhaps I will be able to dedicate more time to it in the future. With that being said, once again, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. Peace.
What is up, everybody? In this video, we're going to be beating Elden Ring Nightreign and all of its Night Lords while staying at level 1. You'd think at level 1 our damage would be terrible, but that isn't exactly the case.
Oh my god. I feel bad for this land. Oh my god.
I'm going to be teaming up with Nuclear Pasta Tom, who is renowned for his record-breaking speedruns. Also joining us will be Zoodle, who's been a challenge runner for a very long time and is best known for being, well, himself. If there's a beam on someone, it's on Zoodle.
It's on Zoodle.
Yeah, that is Zoodle's good. This run was tons of fun, and I really enjoyed teaming up with Tom and Zoodle for it. Make sure you check them out, and let me know if you want to see more runs like this one. See if they're ready to go. Dude, this is going to be fun. Oh, there we go. There's Zoodle. Hello. Yo, this is going to be tough. Have you done level 1 before? No. Okay. Yeah.
Hi, Tom.
Hello. Yep.
Alright. Jimmy from...
Yeah. Named after a legend.
I'm doing Gladius, right?
Sure. I feel like Gladius has got to be one of the harder ones, right? Maybe not in trio, I don't know.
I'm not entirely sure for trio, but solos was a bit tough.
Okay, try fighting us. Let's go.
You want to get a purple weapon?
Yeah.
Or Nightborn.
Yep, that sounds great.
Other than that, it's basically looking for damage reduction.
Yeah, exactly.
And health and stamina.
It's almost less panic because you don't really need a ton of fruits, obviously, right?
So we want to do the night tunnel right now?
Sure. Yeah, we can maybe take out. Yeah, we can maybe take out this guy.
Guys. Oh my god. Most convoluted way of getting to these places.
Nice.
Okay. Oh my god. Oh my god.
I am dumb. Let's see. Lead dog. Okay.
HP flask restoration.
Oh yeah, the slow restoration one. Yeah, that's pretty bad.
It's good for tanks.
Yeah, maybe. I feel like I always would rather have the
Full heal? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh no.
What is happening? What did we get?
That's just the Lindell.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we just gotta make sure we have enough money to buy a stone.
Should we just watch dog
Where
right
is this? Here you can see how bad it is.
Okay.
Oh my god. Walking the river. Yeah, I think going for this like after we upgraded probably would have been a little better.
We can still do it
In the future, but I mean, he's right here. Let's just do it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh what? Yeah, I've seen that a few times. Yeah, just double stun for some reason.
Yeah, that's maybe because of the mark. The mark went off.
Oh, the mark.
Nice. No class restoration.
Okay. Let's take this out. It's easy.
That's a crystalline, yeah.
Or you can get a stone sword key in here too. Yep. Have you found a way to go up these like forts other than underneath?
Well, sometimes you get a spring next to one. That's the only way I've seen.
Okay. I didn't know if there's like some secret.
There might be.
Parkour.
But yeah, not that I know.
That's pretty good.
Okay.
So what do we want? Which is
Ooh, damage negation at full HP, the giant seal.
Ah.
That's a good one.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I'm gonna take that one. Yeah, I got the air tree
Like
feelings.
upliftings as well. Uplifting our mats.
Are you trying to take it to Center Jail on the way?
We can try. What?
Nice.
Nope.
Yeah.
Because they take the money. I'm gonna do one of these.
Yeah, we can do this fire probably.
I don't know if we're gonna make it in time.
Yeah, you definitely like taking Storm at level 1 is not play.
Yeah, I was saying just getting two of these and come back, but if we can all do it, then
I didn't get it. No, I'm dead.
It's fine. Like dying level
don't
1
worry
is
about it.
really
Yeah, don't
not a
worry
big deal.
about it. 'Cause I will say, mobs are a lot easier with 3 people than with 1. Yeah. Okay. I will help Zoodle.
Okay. Let me give it a stock.
Nice stock. weird.
Okay, there we go. Oh, it's just all. Definitely this is not gonna.
Can I get a repose, please?
And the aggro changes.
Oh my god. He should be dead. Let's go. Good job, good job. Try to take out some gnats or that's clutter. Oh, well, never mind. What? I accidentally hit the boss there.
Flash is slowly restores HP, let's go.
Improve dodging or blood loss in vicinity increases.
I would go dodging, probably.
When you kill the lion down there,
I have no idea. It says he's here.
you jump off.
He fell?
Oh my god. Wow, that's really weird.
Yeah, you have one button?
Oh, just see you like running away.
It wasn't the demon units for some reason.
Oh. That's funny.
Meanwhile. Oh, I killed the demons as well. Oops.
I got trolled. I'm inside the wheel of. Can someone? Okay.
The biggest problem I realized right now with Iron Eye is the low stamina I have.
Yeah, low stamina is really. Stamina relics are really good for level 1. Even just attacks that you want to be like surge sprinting away from, you just like don't have enough stamina to do it.
Yeah.
Did you get the line?
Yeah, line's good.
We did.
Yeah. Nice.
Well, we can do more bosses, I don't know. Like more few bosses.
I mean, we've got this holy boss.
Ah, here we go.
This one is just.
This is the Emperor guys.
Yeah.
These guys
Yeah, these guys can mess you up.
It's insane, man. You killed it so fast.
Trash. Yeah. I have another stuff from King too. Want to do an Everju.
I think I've ever seen a dragon get knocked out like that.
Nice. Just keep taking chances and coming from home.
I keep hitting FP out. Oh,
Yes,
that's not what I do.
I think we can.
That poor guy gets fought by 3 level 1 Jerry.
Insane voice. Level 1 voice.
FP, I guess. I don't know. I thought you said you go down. What? Rude.
I think it's actually kind of crazy that even with the ulti doesn't like stagger.
The stone sword, I guess.
Let's do the tower really quick and then go to the Everju, I guess. Or what's that? Is that armor?
No, that's just like the
Oh, the summons.
enemies.
Oh yeah, there they are.
That's a bunch of enemies now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Uh-oh, I'm good on it. Oh shit. Oh shit. My frostbite was effective though.
That should be it, right?
I think there's one more guy here.
What you found?
It's kind of funny because the frenzy tower doesn't.
That's pretty good.
There's a field boss down here now.
Did I get it? I got it?
Yeah, you always get it. Yeah, you don't have to bring it up.
Yeah, and I was not sure because I didn't see it.
Nice got ritual shield towels.
Oh, nice.
Which means there might be another one nearby.
Hello. Nice.
You got robbed.
Yeah, we actually got robbed, yeah.
What?
Check this here for you guys.
Oh, fuck that. I'm gonna penetrate them.
Assassin Cerulean.
Is like the spear guy tankier than the other two? Is that what's happening?
I don't know.
He always have less HP here.
Maybe. Oh, just FP. I just constantly get FP.
Holy crap.
Oh, that sucks. Yep. Yeah, those lead guys are a little more annoying at level 1. That's kind of annoying.
Restoration for my flasks in case they don't fall anymore. Cost like that, huh?
Sure. Is that so? Everyone has damage gauge, not full HP.
Yeah, that's true.
They had to name 2 or 3 things, so I can scrub some stuff for you.
I have at low HP as well, and with successive attacks.
Okay, the successive attack looks pretty good.
Successive is really good for you, yeah.
Oh, I got successive attacks as well.
Nice.
Nice. Okay, well, I think our builds are pretty good, I would say.
Yeah. Some more girl? Maybe some pictures.
Oh, these horse guys are so annoying. They just run away constantly.
Where was ulted them at the start there? Like,
He has a shield, guys. He's invincible. I can't do anything.
Oh, do it. Keep him occupied and whittle his health.
Nice, man.
Yeah, I might go bleed frost on the next one.
Yeah, I can try bleed.
GG. Nice. Good job.
Nice. More stamina.
Got place build damage.
He's all walking. Wedding grace.
Only.
How long does the uplifting or medic last?
Probably 3 minutes, I'm assuming. So yeah,
So you get hit.
but I think it also gives you a damage buff as well.
It does, yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, we may as well.
Surge sprint is like really bad for this stuff. Just so you know, Zoodle.
What's that?
Surge sprint. Because you're gonna have like no stamina.
Nice.
Nice stack. No stack. How do you do this though?
Good.
Nice.
This guy's pretty, like, resistant to frost.
Oh! Oh no.
Nice.
Okay, one will be marked after this.
What the? He likes you, Zoodle. Watch out.
Oh, they're aggravated.
They're after you, man. Oh my god. Wait, they're back.
Yeah, they love range targets. They definitely got that AI to target ranged.
Yeah, that does it.
He's actually doing much better than I thought so far. Really didn't jinx it, but we were kind of smoking. It's on you. Good. Nice.
Nice.
Nice holy shit right there. Bravo.
I'll fight.
Finish him.
Uh-oh. Nice. That was easy.
Hey, yo, why was you only, dude?
Yeah, that was easy. Yeah, I don't know. I think we just had really good. Like, we had really good damage negation and stuff. Our damage was actually pretty solid. I think we killed 17 great enemies. I guess that's more than I normally would.
Guys, why are you still dying on level 9 or 10, okay, Chad? Come on.
Yeah, I see how we started
That first try, what the fuck?
Yeah, but not even that, it was easy. Like, it wasn't even close.
It was easier. It felt easier, dude. It felt easier than other ones, for sure.
It was definitely easier than level 1 Sunny and Pest.
Oh, well, yeah, when we get there, we'll see.
I honestly think with a group, it's not going to be too bad.
Well, Chad, 1 out of 8?
Yeah. Let's do that front.
1 out of 8.
Alright, I'm gonna head down.
Yep, on to the boss. Do you have Chilling Mist also?
Yeah, I got Chilling Mist.
Okay.
There's also a hippo here that we could probably kill. One.
Yeah. I think we can get our weapon up.
Yeah.
First. I'm just gonna summon them. We can see what it is. If it's...
Okay.
But yeah, we could.
No! Oh, 1%.
Blue. Red. Blue, red, red.
ult is just so good. Like,
I missed that ult.
Ow! No, you don't. Oh, he did.
he does.
There we go.
Max HP?
I got improved dodge. I'll
Gradual
take that.
restoration and flask.
Oh man, dude, it's always shit.
Okay, where to next?
Tunnel?
Sure. Yep.
Yep.
Man, they made Hippos really weak in this.
Yeah.
That is, yeah, it's not the gold Hippo, that's the problem.
Yeah,
Alima has like
spot.
double the health and double the
Yeah, and Elmer is just
Oh my god, dude. Yeah.
unheard of.
Yeah, especially under the castle, it's an easy moveset and stuff, but when you're with a team, and he's got all these broad swings, and you just get one-shotted by every tag at level 10.
I want the repost! No. Yeah, let's go upgrade really quick.
Going towards the top.
Right where I am, there's one.
Oh, never mind. You are at the right spot.
There's two.
Yeah.
We can get a small pouch, I guess.
Yeah, I
While charging, I guess is. Where are we going?
Blue marker, left side.
we should maybe do one of the forces and just scavenge for more items at some point, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, the double. The double. Oh, guys, there you go. I can fuck this click.
Best click. Okay, max HP, I'll take it.
Ooh, successive attacks negate damage. Okay.
Nice.
Which one is this? Is this lion? I hope it's. Oh, even better.
Yeah.
Help.
Yeah, we should be there in a second.
We're almost there. We're almost there.